like Anglican or something.
Presbyterian, same religion, half the guilt.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, there's some denominations, like I would say High Church Anglican is more Catholic than Catholic. Like they stick to the traditions more than the Catholic Church have. Even
I identify as the correct denomination of Christian. All right.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. the Church of Mammon.
That was the answer. That was the answer.
Just
right. You're the Church of Mammon.
I'm the Church.
Mammon? Oh my God!
Something like that. Something like that. You got it, bro.
When he read you cannot worship both God and Mammon, he said, well, okay, I'll pick Mammon.
Mm-hmm. Let's go, baby. I'll tell you which one's having more fun. This one.
I'm not denying that.
Hey, also, you know what? It's kind of like, Walmart. When there's less shoppers, there's more selection. You know what I'm saying? Papa Gibbs is getting more benefit from the less people praying to him. Supply and demand. It's economics.
Well, yeah, and then here's the thing: you can have a lifetime of pious church attending or whatever, or you can just buy a PhD in theology. And yeah,
you get two of them.
Same.
Mm-hmm.
See, the problem is, if you'd ever watched Stargate, you would know that relationship goes both ways. So while there's more God per worshiper for you, there's less worshiper per God for that God. So
yeah. They really dive a lot into that 40K, but Stargate, by the way, it's a good show, great show. They're doing. I find it interesting. The show and the movie were going to be took way totally different paths than we're planning. The director of the original movie is like, I hate the show. I want to go somewhere totally different with it. But I think Stargate is possibly.
I gotta say, I like both.
Yeah, I like them both for different reasons.
I thought the movie was a lot more sort of hard science.
The movie still stands the test of time. The CGI is still good. The story is still good. I need to watch the series again because I really like
the series is definitely they do some stuff that you see and you're like, that's definitely what the US would do. Right? Like on Stargate Atlantis when they're getting attacked and you just see them show up with buckets of bullets and the sky is yellow. I'm like, that makes sense. Then other times there's stuff where they're like, oh, they're always the good guy trope, the good Americans, because the post 9/11 era. And I was like, yeah, I can see us maybe a little bit more nefarious in some of these situations. If we were actually doing what the U.S. government we're doing, we wouldn't be in this situation. There's an aqueduct mine, ain't no way Ball's gonna be in control of that shit.
Except for the fact that
there's oil over there.
US does not have the technology to take over an aqueduct mine from Ball, but
Bro, they were fucking wrecking Ball with low tech. By the time they got to fucking having equal tech, it was hands.
Well, by the time they got to equal tech, the gold got wiped out.
Well, to be fair, I guess if this Ball was always never had that many troops, I guess it would have been easier. It would have been probably easy to take one of his things.
I mean, by the time he was under the thumb of Anubis. So
one of the things that stops us
a major player
from being a villain in shows like that is that we are the least powerful people in the network. At least at the beginning of the show.
But we were the best at war.
Yeah, apparently so, because we kept beating them anyway.
But we kept giving the hands.
Difference in power, yeah.
Well, the U.S. is kind of one of those teams. It's we have rules until we don't.
Yeah.
Right.
Just War Theory does the same thing, right? There are things you can do, but you can only do them if there's an absolute necessity for it. Yeah.
And the absolute necessity is they have something we want.
Sure.
Yeah.
Actually, it's interesting. We're having that discussion right now. We're writing a dissent and debate about what causes war or whatever. And one of the big ones is trade wars. If there's a trade war, the odds of war breaking out in between countries goes up. And the famous quote, I'm trying to look for who said it. I think it was Bastiat. If goods do not cross borders, armies will. Yeah. We were constantly on the brink of war in Stargate for that reason.
Yeah.
We should have just traded with them.
Well, why? We came out on top. Yeah, well, hold on. Wait, why should we? If anything, it proves we shouldn't have traded with them because we got all of their shit and we run the galaxy and now everybody's our baby back bitch.
In reality, if a trade opportunity with the Goa'uld had come up, we probably would have taken it in Stargate. Problem is,
they did.
The Goa'uld were far more interested in conquering than trading.
No, they did twice. Ball actually, one of his people comes to Earth and he does trade. He actually like creates a company and does like the CEO and starts selling Google tech, whatever. And then there's that slimy guy that's in like a cameo in a few episodes. What's his name? He's the fat guy, and he's basically like one of their hedonistic ones. He comes and he trades like
Oh yeah,
hedonistic
I
stuff or
remember.
whatever. I think Hathor also does some trades with him.
I
The
don't know
ghouls
if I
are
would
a
call that
good metaphor for
trading so
billionaires.
much
That's
as like extortion.
What?
Sure, yeah, I mean, I don't know. There was a few of them that got sus.
Well, all right. So I guess we may as well get started. He may be a little bit. So, welcome one and all to the Minds of the Ecclesia panel. I am your host, Lethy Water Kai, and with me I have some awesome guests here to talk about the state of our souls today. I will let everybody get an introduction, starting with Admiral Gibbs.
Hi, I'm Admiral Gibbs. Welcome all you new people from Gamers Feud. If you're seeing me for the first time, we do politics 4 nights a week. I like to yell at people and tell them that I'm better than them, because I am. Other than that, you'll see me doing DJ and stuff and having a good time. Excited to tell all these people here why they're wrong.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. And with us today, Cal Rich.
Hey, I'm here to be proven wrong. That's my favorite thing to be. As we say on my debate team, if you lose, you've learned, and so the true winners are the losers.
And see, that is the true spirit of the conversation. And with us today, Tiberius.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Yeah, I've come out of retirement a little bit to have this particular chat. I'm sure it's going to be political anyway, because everything over here is. But
God damn it.
I'm not Christian, but I generally think Christianity is not a bad thing. I'll happily get into that in the details. But yeah, it's great to be here.
Ooh, we will see. And here today with us, Alex Kirsch. How you doing?
Doing well, Lethy. My name's Alex from the Alex Kirsch Project, and I occasionally do short videos from time to time, especially if I feel like choosing violence, especially for panels like this today. Long story short, I'm a U.S. Army retiree. I'm a pragmatic progressive. I'm a truck driver, and I lean very, 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 I wouldn't say very, very left, but most of my views are most correct, actually, as proven in past panels. But I'm here to have a good time tonight.
Awesome. And here today with us, Ancom Psycom. Good to have you.
Good to be here. I'm just here to teach people about how statistics work and hopefully avoid some of the obvious bullshit.
Ooh, that is necessary, especially with this very first topic. All right. So, let me get that up. The rise of religion in the U.S. and what does it mean? Has the rise of religious nuns come to an end in the U.S.? In Pew Research Center's 2023 polling, 28% of U.S. adults are religiously unaffiliated, describing themselves as atheists, agnostics, or simply nothing in particular when asked about their religion. That's marginally lower than our surveys indicated in 2022 and 2021, and identical to what we found in 2020 and 2019, which raises the question, after decades of sharp growth, has the rise of these religious nuns ended? At the risk of sounding wishy-washy, we think it's too early to tell. The identical results we found in 3 of the last 5 years are a sign of stability in the size of the population. At the same time, in 2 of the last 5 years, we obtained readings above 28% in 2022. Our estimates of 31% was 3 percentage points higher, while the 29% were recorded in 2021 was just 1 point higher. We haven't found any readings below 28% in the last 5 years. So although it's possible that the nuns have leveled off, it's also possible that their growth has continued, but at a gradual pace that is difficult to see in the data due to the natural fluctuations that can occur in survey estimates. For example, there was a prior slight dip in religious nuns in 2016, quickly followed by a resumption of long-term upward trend. These kinds of trends are best assessed over the long haul based on many survey readings. So how do we feel about this? Starting with Gibbs.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not really a super devout practicing Christian of any kind. I grew up very Christian, a very strict household. And I got a lot of my expertise. I got 2 doctorates in religion, as y'all know. Basically, I'm the epitome of expert. Y'all just refer to me as Dr. Gibbs for the rest of the panel in regards to religion. Now, as for that being said, Christianity has been a force for good for most of humanity. I mean, let's just look at the conquistadors, for example. They conquered an evil cannibalistic empire in the Aztecs and saved millions of the Native Americans from being eaten. If y'all don't believe me, just recently there was a discovery in Central America of a place next to a sacrificial altar, a pyramid, where they made pozole, and up to 88,000 bodies have been found in that area, and many of them had thigh meat taken from them and been used to cook. So Aztecs were cannibals. The Catholic Church came in and with the power of Christ compelled them to stop existing. It was fantastic. This is a great thing. Let's look forward. Hospitals in America, so many private organizations, private hospitals are owned by Christian groups, private schools. They've been educating our youth for almost all the time. Like, I remember churches have been very passionate about educating the young throughout our history and as a nation and throughout history in general. People that don't like Christianity in general are just hate mongers, really. That's really what it is. They're terrified. The rise of Christianity is just the answer to what people seem to, the populist question. And people seem lost. And Christianity is an answer to that. People can turn to it. They can find a higher power. They can get cured. And if you're against Christianity and higher powers in general, then I guess you're also against AA and Narcotics Anonymous, and you just hate those people and don't believe that system does anything. So if you have anything else to say to that, well, look at the proof. It's in the pudding, folks.
Look at the trees, people. Rich, how do we feel about this?
I also think that it's in the pudding, but I think we're eating two different puddings. But I would say this, like, before we get into like whether it's good or bad or what, I'd like to get more into what the claim is itself. So if you look at the article, I don't know if you want to pull it up at some point so like Chad could see it, Lethe, but
I put it
the
in the
article
chat.
shows. Oh, okay, great. So year over year, it's showing like an increase in the number of religiously unaffiliated. So for those who are maybe a little bit confused when they kept hearing you talk about the rise of the religious nuns, we're not talking about like Catholic nuns. We're talking about people who when they say, what religion are you a part of, they say none. And so we call them the nuns, just to avoid confusion there. But if you were to look, at first blush, you would think, oh, this is just a single data point, right? Because the religious nuns are going up and up and up, and then in 2023 it dips down, and then we'll have the 2024 numbers by next month, I should think, because that article dates January of this year, so we should have something this coming January. But it's not just that because if you look at the last 5 data points, so 2023 all the way down to 2020, 2023 is flat to 2020. So yeah, you have some data points going up and some going down, but in general, if you just look at the last 5 years, it means that it's flat, which doesn't necessarily mean a rise of any particular religion. Like, I wouldn't say Christianity is on the rise, like Gibbs says, but I will say that the religious nuns appear to be plateauing, and that's 5 years of data points that we can point to say that, and we'll have another data point by next month. Maybe we can revisit that once we find that out. So although people will say, I think on this panel, and rightly so, that one dip down for 2024 is like not enough data to really think anything, I think 5 years of data is at least enough to start raising an eyebrow. Like, is this a trend that was real and is now plateauing and it's probably just going to stay at that rate for a while? Or is this just a pause and it's going to keep rising, or will it fall?
Thank you, Rich. And Sociologic, glad you made it.
Yeah. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me. As presumably the only Muslim on the panel, I like this whole. I am seeing more and more people coming into their religion, or like religion as a whole. I think we had our fun with atheism and degeneracy, and that was just a fucking flop. So it's nice to get back to our roots. Come on down, come back. Though I do have my gripes with Christians and Christianity, personally, I think, you want to be a real Christian, be a Jew or become a Muslim. But I'm hoping that as we start to learn, we get back into the faith and get back into the conversations and learning of it, that we'll sway that way. But, I'm glad to see. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. I see not a single fucking Christmas tree from you guys. I hate it.
That's because that's a pagan Yule tree. But
I don't give off.
I guarantee you there's one somewhere in Eucharist's house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure of
Upstairs,
it. Glad you made it, Eucharist. Tiberius, what do you think about this?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to fix my camera here, but it's being a little fucky. Two things. One, I was originally raised Roman Catholic. I became an atheist way before it was cool. Like even back in like what was it, 6th grade? No, 8th grade. Is when I actually kind of lost my faith. But I was always kind of a skeptical type from the beginning. Long story short, I actually will largely defend Christianity because I think it's one of the two decently half decent religions on the planet. Of what we've seen, it's largely down to Christianity and Buddhism. A lot of the other ones bring some stuff to the table, but I've got some serious issues with some of them, some far more than others. Unfortunately, a lot of the new religions, like basically liberalism, communism, and fascism, are trying to take the place of traditional religions, but they're doing so very, very poorly. And I think that's really the actuality of what's going on here, is that while we say that it's secular humanism in these kind of regards today, is that people are realizing that there was a level of tradition and a level of I don't know how to put this, like moral acuity that comes with a religion. It's not just been around for a couple thousand years for no reason. And the rapid abandonment of this is actually not producing the results that I think a lot of people expected. And so people are kind of questioning that decision to move away. And I'll defend that decision on saying that, no, we need to go back at least to some degree. We need to appreciate what Christianity brings to the table, along with our Abrahamic brothers throughout there. And also, I think a lot of people need to be more familiar with Buddhism. I will consolidate this into the open panel, but that's kind of my general thoughts.
All right. Not one loud for Scientology. All this hate in the room. All right, Alex, what do you think about this?
All right, well, so I looked up a little bit more about like why there's like a steep decline as far as like nuns are concerned, and from what I've been able to understand, it's because they feel like they have not had their own needs and ideas met, especially with the Catholic Church. But it seems as though that there is actually a decline across, the country and across other parts of the world where like people are turning more and more away from religion, and there's probably a very good reason as to why. It's because like now here's the thing. I have no problem with people practicing their religion. I have no problem with Christians, Catholics, Muslims, Buddhists. I've seen the good in all of them. I see very good deeds performed as a whole. I see the merits behind it. But let me just say it right this. Organized religion has caused more harm than any other ideology in the history of mankind. It truly has. And the reason why that is because you've had more genocide caused as a result of religion. You've had more people that were killed and were sacrificed, and where people were actually burned at the stake because you are considered a witch, essentially. And you've got people that are enriching themselves with their religion, essentially, and they are actually duping people into believing that if you don't come to our church service and give me your $50 and so I can become a millionaire and buy myself another Cessna jet, you're going to be destined for the pits of hell, which is very harmful as a whole. And you've got people out there that are basically saying, listen, if you don't follow our way of life, then basically you're basically alienating people into like, and you're guilting them into loving God or something like that, which I think is absolutely harmful. And then you got, Gibbs over here saying that genocide is perfectly okay as long as somebody's not like you. Genocide is perfectly acceptable. That's definitely what he said, essentially.
That's
so
what I said.
it's exactly what you said. So
Word for word.
But the thing is, he's actually got his history facts wrong, because when Columbus actually when he actually went to South America, he actually
did he Columbus? Wait, hold on. Columbus.
Wait, you're being attacked in opening. You gotta let him finish his opening.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, like when he went to South America and whatnot and all those other regions, essentially, guess what he actually ended up doing? He actually like kidnapped children and gave them to his men as gifts. That's great Christian values. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? But the fact of the matter is that yes, you can always give credit where credit is due, where there's good people doing good things. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of religious people are hypocrites nowadays. They don't actually care. They just push out this message, but they very, very rarely follow through with it. And the thing is, like, especially when it comes down in it, I'm not just picking on Christianity. I'm talking about picking on every religion. The fact of the matter is, you'll have people out there that says, oh, well, I'm a devout Christian. I follow the Bible. Okay, do you follow the whole Bible? Well, I try to sometimes. But the thing is, like, okay, do you follow the Old Testament? Oh, no, I don't follow the Old Testament. Okay, do you follow the 10 Commandments? Oh, well, of course I follow the 10 Commandments. They are never consistent. They don't have a real message. They have nothing that they can really fall back upon. They'll just say, oh, well, I believe in Jesus Christ. Okay, so what parts of Jesus Christ do you believe? Do you believe in taking care of the sick? Of course not. Do you believe in taking care of the homeless? Of course not. Do you believe in taking care of like those that are less fortunate and whatnot, and actually taking care of like, you know, sick lepers, whatnot? Of course not. They think that's all socialism. They think that's evil, and therefore you should not rely on these things. Rely on the church, even though you very rarely see the churches as a whole taking care of these matters. Like, it's always the small churches, like the little itty bitty churches out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, that are actually raising money for these causes, essentially. But the big mega churches, the one that capture all the attention, like people like Pastor Greg Locke, they don't give a damn about these people, but they're the ones capturing the most attention. But you'll very rarely hear anybody call these guys out. But anyway, I'm going to keep rambling on about this. So next person.
Ancom, what do you think about this?
So my thought roughly follows with the authors of the article. This is a single data point. Yeah, it's a 3 percentage point drop, and that is the largest drop that this particular set of survey results has ever seen. But at the same time, it's one data point. It's a change from one year to another that is an anomaly at best, or at worst, and at best might signify a leveling off, given, as Rich pointed out, if you take the last 5 years in aggregate, it's been roughly level with a slight bump up. I think that the trend of religiously unaffiliated is probably going to continue upward, at least for a little while longer, before it levels off. And, you know, obviously there are a lot of social issues. Politics and religion are so heavily entwined that the particular political landscape this year has been, or, well, I guess I should say last year, 2023, since that's when this data point was for, was enough, I think, to to move people in the direction of religion, at least as far as the connection with politics is concerned. As far as my ideas on religion itself, I'd say roughly parallels what Alex said, in that I think organized religion is a hierarchical shit show that is produced entirely to consolidate power over masses of people through various forms of dogma. Religious belief is fine, but when you turn it into a power structure, I'm gonna take issue with that.
Thank you, Ancom. And I think Euchre stepped away for a moment, so we'll go ahead and open up the conversation, but I want to give him a chance to speak once he shows up.
Wait,
Sure,
let me ask Alex 2 questions before you get in, Gibbs, because you guys are going to.
Okay, I want to respond. I was directly attacked.
I know. So just Alex, real quick, and then this kind of applies to Ancom too. So you guys said basically the breakdown: religions cause war, religious people are hypocrites, and then religion's used to control people. You need to tell me how any of these things don't apply to like democracy, Americans, or guns. Not that guns kill people, but guns give the means to kill more people. Every American I fucking have ever spoken to is a hypocrite, and every ideology or system of government is used to control people, and so on and so forth. So you need to explain to me how none of these apply to like systems that you support.
Well, I'm not a hypocrite, first of all.
I'm
Alex
literally an anarchist, so as far as the question about how it doesn't apply to the systems I support anarchism, so I'm specifically opposed to the sort of organized power structures that
You're an anarchist?
Organized, yes.
Can I add
Okay, hold on.
So wait.
Oh, let Alex answer.
You live within a democracy and support the system within democracy, I'd assume, right?
Rich wanted to say something clear.
Yeah, and then let Gibbs get in then.
I'd like to hear Alex answer that question, but I want to add an empirical context to that question that'll make it easier. Because throughout history, we've always had religion, right? So it's always been, it's like at our founding, when we decided to try secularism as an experiment for this country, we did it because we blamed so much of our violence on religion. And I actually believe in the secularist experiment. I'm a secularist myself. But I will say that the assumption up until that point was that religion was the cause for all of these things. All of these things that Alex attributes to religion, we thought was the cause of religion. And we believed that if we took religion out, or some of us believe, some societies, not America, because secularism is not the same as taking religion away. Some societies, especially after the French Revolution, thought if we took religion away, then these things might go away. And so we tried it. And every society that became like official state atheist societies, we're talking about the Soviet Union under Stalin, we're talking about China under Mao, we're talking about Cambodia under Pol Pot, they all banned religion and went state atheist. And what did they have there? Genocide and murder and war. So I'm not blaming atheism for that. I'm quite friendly with atheism. What I'm saying is take religion away from the equation, and all of those horrible things remain.
Okay, so just to answer all that, the fact of the matter is, I'm not really an atheist. I'm just a skeptic. But here's the thing. Here's the funny part about all that stuff. If anyone was like, well, what about these atheists? Well, listen, I'm going to call all that out, as a matter of fact. I say that that's not the way to go about things.
Sorry,
but the fact of the matter is,
waiting.
yeah, well, yeah, but anyway, like,
Gibbs can wait.
It was a question to Alex.
yeah, but the fact of the matter is, like, listen, our government's hypocritical? Absolutely. And it's okay for us to call those things out, is it not? I mean, can we not call these things out? But yet when it comes down to like to the religious aspect of these things, the second that you call it the religious aspect, oh, you're not a true believer. Oh, there's something wrong with you, essentially. I mean, this is the problem, though. It's just like, and again, I don't have a problem with people being religious, but
Yeah.
There's three aspects of religion.
That applies to like MAGA too, right?
Of course it does, and I'm not mad.
You know,
at
like that's what I'm saying. So you're always going to get pushback from the people you call out. So that's what I'm saying is like, then the problems that you have with religion just literally apply to everything, and so it's like there's no argument to the like religion point.
Well,
because your argument was like religions cause war. Religion has killed more. Like, you know, wars of religion have killed more than. Well, I mean, wars, you know, of land.
Where am I wrong though? Where am I wrong though? Am I wrong?
No, it's just kind of a moot point if we're going to sit here and agree that, like, obviously ideological wars have killed a lot of fucking people too, and it, you know, not based off of religion, like communist, non-religious genocides have happened, like Stalinism, Genghis Khan, like a lot of people have been fucking killed in the name of just like conquest.
Great example, Genghis Khan.
I'm gonna jump into this for a second because
Yeah, boss, I'm gonna head right back. I'll be right back.
Gibbs has been waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
Gibbs.
All right, so first of all, I was attacked in the opening, so I'm going to just set some straight things. I just want to say, I want to directly respond to what Alex said, show how inaccurate and bad-faith he is, right? When Alex says, kidnapped by Columbus, what he actually means is St. Columbus liberated them from the cannibalistic Aztec Empire and brought them to safety across the ocean from their evil, cannibalistic, human sacrifice crazy overlords and protected these people from having to die. There's a reason why Cortez was able to take over the empire with so few troops. It's because all the people there rose up against it for the greater good, which is Christianity. Christianity's help with sciences. You know, it developed science all these times. It's developed learning in schools. It's helped all these people with hospitals. It's been built. It's just like asinine to sit here and try to pretend that Christianity isn't a net force for good. I mean, if you even look at modern studies, people that are devout and show more like faith-like activity in church are much less likely to be depressed. Why is that? Well, clearly it's because they're doing good, they feel good, they see good. It's just like a feedback loop. While people that take Alex's opinion just hate everybody that's doing successful and don't want to work for themselves.
Okay, so first things first, okay? You can be all those things and not have any affiliation with religion whatsoever. This is true, right?
You can be all.
Yes.
Well, no, I don't think you could be a conquistador and not be a part of Catholic.
No, I didn't say conquistador. I said you can be a good. No. Well, okay, you can be okay. What I'm saying is like you can be a happy person living a good life and be an atheist, and you could be but you could be a Muslim and happy person, have the same kind of outlook on life and be happy and happy.
You know what? I've never met a happy atheist. I call bullshit on that.
You've never okay? Then you're living in a fucking closet or something like.
I'm definitely not the one living in the closet. Probably atheist is.
Okay. Look at all the happy Scandinavian countries. The quality of life in those Scandinavian countries, and they're predominantly atheist, is above ours. So what does that tell you?
The what is above ours?
The Scandinavian countries, the quality of life in Scandinavian countries, and
according to what metric, bro? They eat like pickled shark. You want to eat pickled shark? Fuck that.
What does it fucking matter? What does it matter?
Their quality of life is good. They're eating pickled shark, and like that's like a main meal. Like fuck that.
Who cares what they're eating?
I care. Like if you're telling me someone doing that, their quality of life is better than ours. That shit smells like refried dick, bro. Like you can't tell me they have better quality life when they're sitting here with mouths full of vinegar breath. Come on. Give me a real argument.
Their quality of life isn't.
Give me a real argument.
Hey, if we like
can we stop putting these two together?
If they like that, then it makes them happy to eat that. Therefore, their happiness level is higher.
Anybody eats
their quality of life is objectively higher as a result. If you look at the life satisfaction indexes, the Nordic countries are far and away at the top of those lists. Whereas
my satisfaction is way higher. I've never heard about this Norwegian thing in the first place.
Finish up, Ancom.
Whereas the United States is fairly far down that list in terms of overall life satisfaction. So
Yeah, I mean, but like according to what metric? It's just like you're like picking these arbitrary
you can
metrics.
look up the
Like, you know what?
metrics.
Here's my happiness
life
index.
satisfaction
Now that
index.
I heard that y'all think that people that eat pickled shark are fucking living the high life, my happiness satisfaction index went down 3 points. Like, you see how arbitrary and bullshit that is? Come on,
No,
give me something real. Give me
we
a
are
good
giving
try.
you something real.
Try-
You're
try-
just,
Your
do better.
personal incredulity
I'm not
is
accept that.
not an
Give-
argument.
Gibby's just
here.
doing
It's-
trust me bro stats. That's all you do. Is trust
I'm
me
not
bro
doing
stats.
trust me,
Is-
bro. That's
You
what
are,
you're
because
doing. You're picking some
No.
arbitrary metric and going, yeah, that
arbitrary
measures
is based
it.
on fact. It is based on fact.
Well,
you tell me
what
that
fact?
you tell me that Scandinavian countries are not better, happier than we are as a country as a whole.
No, and if they are, it's because of all these atheists. They're unhappy. Their causes bring us down.
What do you mean
If
they're
anything.
unhappy? What? That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't
I don't know.
make any
Follow
sense.
along. It makes plenty of sense.
All right, Tiberius.
Go ahead, Tiberius.
All right, so I don't know who I want to pick on because I want to pick on you both.
Hit me.
I'll go. Okay, fair enough. So
Yeah, hit me.
my general reply to both you and Ancom is: what is the difference between organized religion and politics?
Not a whole lot, honestly.
That's kind of the problem I have here, is that we
Okay.
like secular humanists, and you're kind of following into a lot of the arguments that they bring up, is that they try to treat religion as this like arch evil of history when it's literally tied at the hip of every organized politics that we have. And what we really need to actually admit is that politics is religious. Like, a lot of people do not actually like conduct a scientific doctrine into like what they believe politically. It is very much a lot of feels and beliefs that I believe that if we're going to have a better society, we have to do X, Y, and Z things. Some of that can be informed by like information, empirical review, and study, but we have to be incredibly honest that a lot of this is moral basis based on the feels. And that innately is going to make politics an kind of a destructive and chaotic force, right?
The difference is politics gets away with selling factually fictitious bullshit, whereas it's a lot harder to get away. Not impossible, as we've seen with Trump, mind you, but usually it's a lot harder to get away with that within an educated democracy. So religion has a pattern of making people believe bullshit. Bullshit their own holy books don't even say that most people within the religion believe anyway. Whereas in politics, there is at least a level of accountability that religious leaders are not typically held to.
Wait, where's the accountability?
I mean,
Like literally,
there
just
are
where's the
various forms of
accountability?
accountability with regard talking about elections, talking about being able to see voting records. You can see most of what a particular politician or elected official does.
Yeah, but when they
in
do
their
something,
job
we
and
can't
choose
hold
to
them
replace
accountable. Just because I can be like, look what this person did, doesn't mean I'm holding them accountable. It's just me being able to recognize that they fucked
No,
me over and
that's literally
did
what
something.
accountability is. It is the ability for others to see what you are doing and then take
Then accountability
action.
doesn't matter to me. How do you hold people responsible for the things that they're doing? That's more important.
I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. How you're holding people responsible for their actions is the pinnacle, and even within representative democracies, that's not really something that can be easily done. There are certain ways to do certain actions within it, but this is also why I don't generally support representative democracies. It's just that's the most practical way to do things at this point in time. So
Well, and here's the thing, like Tiberius, you brought up the fact of like, government and like religion, like the two are like somewhat similar, okay? But here's like the main difference between the two, okay? The reason why is because, for one, yes, we elect our elected leaders, and if we feel like they're not doing a good job, then we could just basically cut them loose. We've also got this problem of like, oh my God, we got all these politicians that are enriching themselves, but yet there are religious leaders out there enriching themselves, and that's perfectly fine. They get tax exempt status. They can buy $24 million Gulfstream jets and whatnot, and they can fly from one side of the country to the next. And you've got televangelists out there that are saying, listen, if you give me your tithe right now, you will be healed of your cancer, essentially. That's to me, that's dangerous. Like any politician was, and the thing is, if any politician said the exact same thing, I would be like, what the fuck is wrong with you, essentially?
That's why, it's because they played politics, though. They played the politics game.
I was gonna say,
matter,
this is
though. That's
politics.
wrong.
Like, okay,
It's
like,
wrong, though.
okay, it's wrong 100%. Like, I have some issues going to sleep at night looking at some of the shit our society allows. I really fucking do. The problem
Like
is
what?
that it's everywhere, and it's not just religion. I will probably give you guys at least some credit that the religious community is more susceptible to politicking and more particularly demagoguery. Because there's at least a level of check that is in the political system that religion doesn't have. I will kind of give you that. But at least on a lot of the same mechanisms and a lot of the ways that this all behaves, unfortunately, it really is like you guys, I know, don't like Trump, and you feel like a lot of what he said and a lot of what he did to the American people was he just lied to them and bullshitted them into voting for him, right? Like, how is that not like akin to every evil thing that you're putting up in religion? It's like even through a secular lens, the damn systems do the same things. So we're holding one system to a different standard, or I'll put it this way: I don't think the different standard meets the severity for what we're doing it to. Like I've got issue with that.
What's up,
The-
Rich?
Universe is back.
My response there is one system is based on factual falsities. The other is based on how you can manipulate the facts or ignore them. But we don't defend politicians like Trump by saying, oh, it's just what he believes. No, we specifically say he's lying. Whereas if
You
you go
don't.
after someone for what they believe in a religious context, most of the time people will just say, oh, well, that's just what they believe, and that's the end of the conversation. The level of manipulation that can be done in these two arenas is not equal. They are similar of kind, but they are not similar of magnitude.
And welcome
I have
back.
a
Wait, can
question.
you
I
explain that?
disagree
Can
with
you
that.
explain that like
I-
I'm five?
I-
Can you explain that like I'm
Yeah,
five?
yeah. Okay,
Hold on.
sorry. Like we're being very autistic in the way we say this, but the translation
Yeah.
is this: we're having a disagreement on how big of a deal between how politicians can lie to you versus how big the preachers can lie to you. And what they're
hold on.
hold on, let me just finish it real quick, and I'll turn it over. Is that what they're basically arguing? And I disagree with this to a large degree. Is that preachers can get away with bullshitting you on levels that politicians just fucking can't. And while I
What?
think there's a level where that is actually somewhat true, I don't think on a scaling factor that it is.
Yeah, and like
Is
a
that,
local level, sure.
like
Well, hold on.
yeah, go ahead.
I want to
James.
even talk about it at the most macro level, right? The argument here has been put forth by people that are not in favor of religion this whole time that more people die of religion than anything, right? Basically, whatever. Well, I take some umbrance with that. Genghis Khan killed so many people that it basically cooled the earth by 3 degrees. Guess what? He led a secular, meritocratic empire. Communism. How many people? Millions of people died under communism worldwide. Millions and millions. How many people died under fascism? How many people died in all these different wars? Like it's just endless. And then we can also even talk about, if we want to really get down, every time like a political system was put in place and it failed dramatically, and the country turned into a third world or fell apart or people died, like that all falls in there, and that happens all the time. And that's like it's in a lot of times, even with the religious aspect of the rule is fine until the politics aspect gets in there and corrupts a theocracy and then turns it evil. And it's not the religion itself. So like at that point, it's really just man failing, and really religion never is the cause of all these problems. It's just evil men. So to sit here and try to blame religion at the macro is bullshit, because it's really just down to like who's doing what.
And this is where I want to punch the other
No,
side. Is that like
I'm saying
like the religion's he's trying to do the same thing that you guys are doing, where it's like these two are inevitably tied at the hip. They do exactly the same thing, but we want to distance ourselves from one or the other, where we say, no, politics corrupts religion or religion corrupts politics. Either one, it's an Ouroboros, or two, or it's literally the same animal, but we call it a different thing. Like I don't see enough.
It's the same
this
animal.
is-
We call
this
it a
is
different
why-
thing. I think
Okay, cool.
politics
I'm
and
with you.
religion are like similarly tied to where like nowadays the non-religious are just see like the president as their fucking priest, or like as close to Jesus as we possibly can, anointed, and then like now your governors are essentially your fucking like these are
maybe
your
I'm
priests. These are
Well,
the
the
yeah.
funny part
Yeah,
is,
look.
I don't believe in that though. I don't believe you should worship any one individual.
Yeah.
That's the
Worship
thing.
is different,
You're I'm not talking about you,
Yeah.
right? That's the
Yeah.
issue. It's like I'm not attacking you, but like look
Yeah,
at the
I know.
state of the country, right? The non-religious typically they're either they've gone into either celebrities or influencers are their prophets, or they've gone into politics, and it's like you have the MAGA crowd that even like the slightly religious think the guy is like touched by God, right?
Worship may be unavoidable.
yeah.
I think that's what it comes down
So,
to.
so what you're saying is the MAGA crowd is being influenced by religion.
Well, hold on. I mean, look at the opposite.
I think
I-
they're
I
the
think-
same
they lost.
thing.
I mean,
I
when
think
Kamala, when
worship is
Kamala
something
lost,
that's
people
gonna
started
occur
crying.
if you
Well-
subtract religion away from it. The people end up worshiping something else. And
Yeah,
that
we
turns
just worship
out
idols
to
on
have the
Earth.
same bad outcomes that we're attributing to religion. But I do want to get it back to just want to say real quick. One fast answer to something Gibbs said at the beginning. It's not Christianity that's on the rise right now. I agree that at the beginning we talked about how the nuns are leveling off or maybe declining, but what's on the rise is Islam. Like that's what Ali was pointing to. So if Gibbs, if you're saying whoever's on the rise, like that's who those
Yeah,
are the
Islam's
people
saying
that
it.
we
I
should
think
follow. Christianity
well,
is
that's not what
still
I'm saying.
declining. What's happening is Islam is on the rise. But I do want to get back to the real question, which is why we're supposed to be here, which is why do the nuns appear to be leveling off? That's the. I'd like to hear.
It's because
some
people are
answers
looking
to
for
that.
answers.
I think they
People are looking
tried.
for
I actually
I think
want to
they tried.
give Eucharist a chance. He just showed up,
Yep.
and I would like to get his input on this.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm trying to get a feel of where the conversation's at. Thank you for your patience. My children decided they did not want to sleep tonight, but I like Hal's question of why the nuns are leveling off. I kind of always expected that to happen. I think it's good to point out though that, as you're saying, that like the nuns leveling off or even declining, as I heard you say right before I had to run out earlier, this is just a short trend. Like we don't know if it's a trend yet, but if it is the case that this is going to start declining, it doesn't seem like it's directly translating to now Christianity is back on the rise. The nuns are slowly starting to identify with a variety of things, maybe sometimes Christianity, but yeah, Islam is growing. But also there's a rise of people in these surveys who identify as some sort of spiritual or neo-pagan as compared to previous periods. And I had a conversation a long time ago with, he was the president of my undergraduate college, and he was like an Ivy League PhD, very smart guy, Anglican, very faithful religious man. But we were having conversations about like the culture in general. So this would have been about 2013, 2014. And so, still in the midst of this like spike in nuns and, coming out of, I guess, the sort of hangover from the new atheism stuff, but still sort of vestiges of it. And I was asking him if he expected that to continue. He'd been alive a lot longer than me and he had some insight into these things. And his estimation was always that there was always going to be some reversion to some sort of spiritualism or some sort of paganism. That was the direction he saw it going. And I think that's, predictable as well. I see witch talk things and all these wonderful movements on the rise. But yeah, whoever said before, people are looking for answers, I think that's exactly right. Like I think there's something deeply unsatisfying and deeply culturally I don't, this sounds like so Nazi and I don't even want to say it, but like degenerative to a culture about just plain secularism, that people look for things to latch on to that feel more substantive, whatever that is. Yeah.
As a secularist, actually, to some degree, this actually pains me to say it, but like as somebody who's looked into history, every time that a society goes through what we would largely call a secular cycle, where people tend to not believe in either a higher power or a higher like group of community, like it's some of the most disastrous times in history. Like this is literally like not just the fall of Rome, but like we're talking about the fall of major civilizations consistently. Is where they start, they stop giving a crap and they become hedonists.
Yeah, I think something that's interesting though is I agree and I yes based. I think though it's not always like one-to-one with like belief in a higher power. Like something interesting for a long time about England is I think they've avoided some of that you're talking about, and there's still like there's a high percentage of Anglican Church identified people who are functionally atheist or would identify as atheist, right? And so the article that we got sent, right, you have the Richard Dawkins types now who call themselves cultural Christians, but this has been a thing for a long time. Back to the mid 20th century, you had, regular church going people who absolutely believed none of the crap. And I think having the ritual forms of religion in some way staves off some of the things that you're talking about. I don't like, even as a sincere believer myself, I'm not sure sincere belief is always the thing that you need to sort of stave off the cultural crisis. Yeah.
I think a lot more people
actually, I think
are
it's
like going with the
important there.
cultural like version of their religion. I just want to add to that. I think a lot more people aren't going necessarily into like fundamental like religion, right? They're doing the whole cultural thing, which is like they identify with the fact that they were born into this thing. They understand the history. They feel connected with this history, but they don't necessarily like follow the doctrine. Like
and
to
I
the
think
T.
it's also important to make a distinction between secular and anti-clerical, right? Which is the difference between the American and French revolutions. I think you can absolutely be secular and also be a believer, not just a cultural Christian, but actually believe. Because secularism, at least in the American understanding of it, is just that we tolerate all faiths, not that we don't have one. That's it.
Well, the fact of the matter is like, here's the thing. Again, people seem to think like I'm attacking like certain religions. No, I'm just simply saying that organized religion as a whole has, because the fact of the matter is like everyone says like, why do you go to church? Oh, well, because my parents took me to church all the time, because you really didn't have a say in the matter. And then you're basically being told, okay, these are your beliefs and you're going to stick to them. And here's the thing. I'm sure some people out there is like, listen, I actually believe in what I believe, which is fine. Okay. That's perfectly acceptable. But then when you start saying like, oh, well, all these other beliefs are fucking wrong, but they can never explain essentially why. They just point out which religion is wrong. Like, for example, the Christian will say the Buddhist is wrong. The Christian will say the Jew is wrong. The Muslim is wrong.
Hey, look what I can do.
Because they're always like going at one another. They're saying as to why their religion is wrong, essentially.
Yeah.
Wait,
That's literally what Democrats and Republicans do,
Yeah,
and communists and socialists and so on and so forth. It's like, wait, even if people are just traditionally religious, right? Why'd you go to church? Well, my parents took me to church, and this is what I do, and we just do this as a community. It's a traditional thing at that point. They may not necessarily be strong believers, and yet they may think the other tradition is wrong. But like, we have the same thing in secular like communities. We have the same thing in atheism. Like, people disagree on like the traditions, on what their communities like. We just have different beliefs in general.
I would also argue that at least with religion, like when you lose, like it's like different, right? So I've seen notice right after the election, like how many people that on the left, right? They just feel lost. I've seen just like this rage, this vitriol. Like it seems like people are lost. They're looking for answers. It's true. However, like when Republicans lost, yeah, they had some of that, but a lot of them would turn to the church because there's always like this higher power. They have the community there to support them. Like if you're a Kamala person and all of a sudden, like your Progressive Victory Fund like fail, guess what? Now who do you have to go jump in their arms? Nobody. Now y'all are eating each other. Versus a Republican, when our people fail, I'll just go down to the church. We'll have potluck. We'll hang out. Maybe we'll go eat some fried catfish. All sorts of things. Or like I'm sure it's the same with Islamic communities. I don't really know if
the communal aspects apply.
So
community
here's the thing.
applies, even if like the religion religion provides provides some type of cohesion. You have some type of communal like agreement into like, hey, this is something we all agree we can all gather upon. You have celebrated you have holidays, you have so on, like all these things that come with it. You kind of just point like at the negatives and kind of like refrain from like the positives, which are like,
okay,
people
so
do find joy and community within these things.
Okay, so I'm gonna break it down for y'all like this, okay? Because like, okay, first things first, I want to make it clear, okay? A lot of us on the left, yes, a lot of us are all caught up in our fucking feelings, but you know what? I'm okay. I'm fine. I accepted the results of the election. When the right loses elections, they swear up and down. No. I'm gonna do this. Tiberius, stop it, okay? We accept the results of the election. The right still has not accepted the result of the election. But the fact of the matter is, when I look at organized religion, I look at it in three aspects, okay? And Ali actually hit on the first one, okay? The first aspect is the community aspect, which I respect more than anything else, because here's a good example. Okay, whatever. You said it fine. But anyway, like there was a Christian church and a Muslim in a mosque that was opening up in Tennessee. The Christian church just opened up its doors and say, hey, you know what? We're going to accept these people, and they have like community events. That's fine and dandy. That's great. I get the effect that there are people out there that have this community aspect. They want to get together. That's the first part of organized religion. The second part is the control aspect, where they feel like they can micromanage people, tell people how to dress, tell people how to act, tell people that they have to pay penance, tell people that they have to do certain things or else they're going to be destined for the fire pits. Tell people that if you don't do these things, then you're destined essentially for eternal damnation, essentially. You're basically guilting people into telling people you need to come to church or else. You're basically going to be destined for absolute damnation. Not a good way to look at it. Then you got the third part, which is the crusade aspect. You got people that are willing to die and kill other people for their religion. Look no further than people that bomb abortion clinics. Why are they doing that? It's because they believe that the church tells them that God says abortion is wrong, essentially. This is like the aspect of these guys.
If you vote for Donald Trump, you're voting for the end of democracy. You're literally voting for the end of America if you vote for Donald Trump. This was the rhetoric.
It's cool. I mean, like, I was trying to get to my end point, but the fact of the matter is, it's just like...
You weren't there yet?
I wasn't there yet because I was trying to get there. But everyone likes to get up on their feelings. But the thing is, it's like, if people are going to start saying like, well, what about this secularism? What about all this politics? Listen, I'm going to be critical of that as well. But right now we're talking about religion. I can hold all those things to account because I'm not saying I believe in this wonderful utopia where everybody gets along, but I'm simply saying it's just like, if we stuck to certain principles, right, where everybody kind of got along, it's like, listen, I disagree with you, but we can still get along with each other. That's fine. You would not hear a peep out of me. But the fact of the matter is, we live in the real world, essentially, where, yes, Organized religion has some good aspects for it. But the thing is, what captures the most attention? All the negative shit, essentially. But yet, whenever we try to condemn it, we're
Where's
like,
the
"Oh, well,
negative
you know,
shit?
no, no."
Wait. As of lately, in recent history, where are the actual religious wars and versus like the political wars? The political wars are the ones that are actually like killing people right now. We're doing land grabs and political
hates
wars.
Christian hospitals.
Israel and Gaza is a great example right now.
That's not a religious war.
That is definitely a religious war. You mean to tell me
It's
that's not
literally
religious?
not. It's not a religious war.
It's
not
definitely religious. Okay, how is it not a
That's-
religious
I'm
war?
Lebanese. I think I know if it's a religious war or not.
How is it not a religious war? I mean,
It's a war over land.
A war over land because essentially they believe that the people of Palestine are subhuman. He's actually made that abundantly clear. He actually says that the people of Palestine are subhuman.
Yeah, it's
simply because they're-
racism.
Okay, we
It's
are,
racism.
we are
True.
definitely derailing from the conversation.
Yeah, it's racism. True.
So let's
This
get
is
back to
so back to the
Religious
difference.
matters.
Right now, all the wars are political. There are no real religious wars. There are no crusades happening right now.
So,
Mm.
I kind of want to point at you, Alex, and be like, all right, cool. Like everything that you like level against religion is something that I can level against your nation and the fact that you were a soldier.
Okay, go
Like,
for it.
I mean, I would hope that would kind of connect the dots itself, but I'll kind of lay it out in this regard: is that you're born in the United States, you didn't choose it, right? Like we rolled the dice pretty fucking well, but we have to admit, like, there's a lot of things that we have to like question ourselves on. Like, is this actually a good thing about our society? Yada yada yada. Is the United States even worth a shit? Right?
We can.
I think if we're going to be wise and intelligent individuals, we should question at least most shit that we're told, at least to some degree. But going on from that is that not only that, but you took either for granted or like full-hearted all of these things about how the United States is awesome, and you just said, I'm going to fight people over this. I'm going to defend that or attack others based on that. So, like, the level in which, like, you hate the fact that religion sends people off to war and to kill people, you've been the political instrument of that. You are literally in the same camp as the people you hate, and for almost the same reasons.
Was that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so first things first, like when it comes down to an example of that, like we were all duped as far as like the reasons as to why we went into war. But I pretty much had no say in the matter, essentially. I just did it. I went. There are some things I can definitely say that, like there's a lot of things I could be critical of, and a lot of us are critical of, essentially. Okay, so if that's fair, is that fair?
Sure.
Okay, excellent. But the fact of the matter is like my only thing is like we can be critical of like the systems that do send us to war. That's not a problem whatsoever. But like when it starts going into religion, suddenly we're going into forbidden territory. We can't be critical of this whatsoever because that is something that is 100% sacred. What
does that mean? What does you can't be critical of religion mean?
So why is it like if people are critical of religion, suddenly you're heading into forbidden territory? You can't be critical of religion.
Like what? Explain to me. Explain to me what that means. No, wait. I need to know what that means because you're saying it, and I don't know what that means.
Well, what he's saying is something delusional. Because there's no one group that's discriminating.
Well, let him
Okay, you
more
can
than
let him,
anybody.
you can let him answer it.
Well, I will.
Vince.
I just want to say this one thing. Because what he's saying here is we can't be critical of religion when we all know that in the United States you can be like anything you want except a Christian. That's the one group of people that everybody always comes after.
Nobody says.
Well, everybody says that. Well,
Nobody says that.
You're wrong.
Oh, wait, Alex.
That's definitely a
trust me,
sentiment.
bro. Statistics.
Alex,
Once again,
it's not trust me, bro.
Alex,
So
let me
let's go
answer
ahead
this.
and let Alex
That's-
answer the question he was asked.
No,
Yeah.
that's an invented argument that is not based in any reality whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's a
So, like-
factual argument based on a lot of reality.
It's not a factual
I don't
argument.
know.
Okay, listen. I've made it abundantly clear.
Hey, look
I
what
have no
can do.
problem with people practicing religion. I just simply
Thank you,
pointed out what
Trey.
organized religion.
I know. So when you say critical, so like I'm here. Outside of JQing, right? You can really kind of criticize religion because JQing isn't like criticizing a religion. That's just being anti-Semitic. So where can you not like criticize religion?
Well, for
How
example,
where like you live in America, you can say whatever the fuck you want.
Mhm.
So where
Yeah.
can't you criticize religion? Explain.
okay, so for example, is it wrong for somebody, for example, like I'm just going to bring up your religion, for example, is it wrong for somebody to draw a picture of the prophet? Is it wrong to do something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
Because we don't believe in like idolization, and to draw pictures and make portraits and so on and so forth is to
Okay.
like idolize. So even when we personally draw like depictions of the prophet, we would cover their face with like what would be like essentially like light,
Certainly.
so it'd be white. Yeah.
Certainly, and I can definitely respect that, honestly. But as somebody I was actually going to do that, which I would actually condemn if somebody decides to make a mockery of that. But the fact of the matter is like we saw people like actually being attacked over something like that. It's like the whole criticism, and like people have this criticism.
Yeah.
Like, well, we felt we were insulted about this. The same thing. Can
Yeah,
be
they're
said, like,
dumbasses.
yeah, exactly. They're dumbasses. We can agree for something like that. But the thing is like whenever I say, oh, you can't criticize like certain religions, that's because like if we start like saying it's like, oh well, I criticize this certain religion, then all of a sudden you're just like, oh my God, this person's attacked me for my religious beliefs. Or like, for example, a gentleman out there.
So Charlie Hebdo did the thing where they posted
Mhm.
on the cover of their magazine a picture of Muhammad. Someone shot them,
Yep.
and then they doubled down and did it again with him holding a sign that says "I'm sorry, Charlie." Right? So I mean, like,
Yeah.
not only were they like critical, they doubled down, and like, yeah, that is disrespectful to people like that of the religion. But France has like a long history of kind of being like anti-Islamic, like a little bit of Islamophobia, like through their government. I mean, to be fair, they're anti-clerical in general,
Mhm.
but they kind of dig in on the Muslims. So it's like, yeah, there was intention to that. You are being disrespectful. So just by no, technically you don't have the right to draw the picture because it is disrespect.
Yeah, of course. And I would agree
Yeah.
with that too. What you got, Gibby?
Yeah, so I just
Sorry,
posted
Nathan.
2 sources that talk directly about how media coverage portrays Christianity in a negative light mostly, and how other people think coverage of religion is over sensationalized. This has been a war, like the war on Christmas. I know that's kind of a meme, has been a thing since at least the 90s. Like it's been a whole thing. And like, I mean, just this last presidential campaign, we have clips of Kamala going, "Merry Christmas, how dare you?" We can say anything else. If I walked up and said
Yeah.
Happy Kwanzaa, no problem. If I said
Happy
Happy Hanukkah, no
holidays.
problem.
Fuck
But if
that
I told
shit.
somebody Happy
Gibbs,
Christmas,
when was the
oh,
last
yeah,
time you
fuck
celebrated
I'm just
Kwanzaa?
saying.
I want to see something
Hey,
you
listen,
made for
that's it.
Kwanzaa.
I never have, but if I told you Happy Kwanzaa,
Elementary school,
that'd
brother.
be fine. But if I told you Happy Merry Christmas, oh, shame on you. How dare you say Merry Christmas? When we get to the level of a political presidential
that
candidate
happen?
for the entire United States saying, how dare you, dare you say Merry Christmas? That's ridiculous. That's
Which
terrible.
There was a big
And
stint
she
a few years
hold on,
ago.
another thing she said at a rally, someone said something Christian, Christ is King, and she said, you're at the wrong rally. It's pretty clear there seems to be a war on Christians
There is
throughout,
no
like,
war on
whatever.
Christians.
And
Well,
I'm just
it was
saying,
a funny comment.
I'm just
though.
saying. I'm just saying. You say
Kamala's
this
the
doesn't
leader
happen.
of the
I
war
just
on
provided
Christianity.
2 sources, and we can go find those clips if we need to of them saying
Okay.
it. And
Yeah,
that's
I'd
just
like to see
off
the clip
top
of
of my
that.
head.
If you could
Off
It
the
was,
top of
it
my
was the
head.
most
I'll shoot
relatable
my
she
clip.
was at
Oh,
any of these
yes.
campaign events, though. It was so
Yeah,
funny.
yeah,
like,
I
it
know
was
it's
the
hilarious.
best.
It was the best she looked.
If she just told more jokes, she would have done better. Wait, so I'm just wondering, Alex,
Yeah.
do you think there's a difference? I think you're right? Obviously, religion is it's a topic people are very passionate about, and so when you poke it,
Sure.
people get upset. But that's true of anything, right? So there's this guy, I forget his name, but he goes around and he protests like college campuses and big public events. He wears like a sandwich board over his chest, and it says something like children can't consent to puberty blockers or something like this. He's protesting trans care for minors, and he's gotten assaulted. He's had stuff thrown at him, right? Because when you poke something that people feel very strongly about, like your anti-trans stuff, he goes and he gets assaulted. Or people who stand outside of abortion clinics with signs that say, you're murdering your baby or whatever, they get assaulted too, right? So like, I agree that like, yeah, you criticize religion, people get upset. You criticize a lot of things, people get upset. But it's kind of cool that we can criticize those things. I'm not sure that religion is this special thing that is like above criticism. I understand, like, yeah, people get really pissed off about it, especially if you do it in a way they consider to be disrespectful. But I don't know that it's I don't know that it is
It's not special at all.
of a different kind, than these other ones.
Like,
Yeah.
I think religion is constantly not attacked, but I think it's constantly scrutinized. Not only between each other, but like politics, particularly secular academia, fucking shoots religion all the time. And while I think a lot of these criticisms are not only valid, but like legit, the reality is that I don't think it's remotely infeasible to question religion. I think there's a lot of people who will be like, you're attacking, you like, my fifis, like, you shouldn't talk to me about this. How dare you criticize me? But I mean, fuck, I can do that about somebody's fucking sports team.
So I think, for example, Alex, I think it's completely fair, right, to bring up abortion clinic bombings. Like, we had a period in the 70s and 80s, particularly, where this was a real problem. Like, there was one year with like multiple dozen incidents of people firebombing abortion clinics. That's fair. You can bring that up. But I would say, what about the people recently who, over the course of a couple years, firebombed like 10 care clinics for anti-abortion clinics that are trying to provide
care for women. People get upset about these things. They do violent things. I don't think it means that all pro-abortion people are firebombers. I don't think it means all religious people are firebombers, right? So I bring up the counterpoint, not to say you can't criticize religious people who firebomb abortion clinics, but to say I don't know that religion is this essentially bad thing that you're making it out to be, in the sense that it uniquely motivates these bad violent acts. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, so first things first, I got to do another fact check of the fact check, essentially. So when it comes down to the how dare we say Merry Christmas, it was essentially talking about like protecting people from deportation. The full context, it is morally wrong when we sing happy tunes and sing Merry Christmas and wish each other Merry Christmas. These children are not going to have a Merry Christmas. She said during a 58-second video, how dare we speak Merry Christmas? How dare we? They will not have a Merry Christmas. They don't know if they will be here in a matter of days, weeks, and months, because it's such a Christian thing to actually say, even though you're supposed to welcome foreigners into your land, but we say, nope, sorry, children are not welcome into our land, essentially. So I'm just putting it out there. That's basically what she was talking about. But,
That's exactly what I said.
No. I actually
Perfect,
corrected what
thanks.
you said. I gave you full
Exactly,
context about it.
word for word.
I gave you full context essentially. So,
You
but
got it.
anyway, but the fact of the matter, no. I heard you, and you just basically said one quote. That's it. So I gave you full context as regarding.
Yeah, I said a lot of
Before
things,
we
but-
move on
Yeah,
to the
but
next
anyway, no.
topic, before we move on to the next
You
topic,
say a lot of things, Gibbs.
I would like to readdress the question of
Sure.
why do the nuns appear to be leveling off?
I don't think it offers enough. Is what I would offer.
Yeah,
That's what I
It's people looking for an
I
answer.
don't think statistically we can make an inference from a relatively small data set that seems to be a change in a much longer trend. I think we need a few more data points before we can say anything even speculatively, much less conclusively.
Okay, let me forward this
Thank you,
thing.
Anton.
I'm going to speculate and hypothesize that this trend is going to continue, because I've been the spear tip of this, and what I've consistently seen, and I, again, hypothesize here, that what is happening is that a lot of the secularists that are part of the vanguard have gotten into their 30s, and they're like, this is really an anti-communal thing, and I like having friends. I like having things to actually, care about people with. And unfortunately, while it is kind of seen as barbaric to us, religion fills a lot of those holes. Getting together with people every Sunday to compare clothing, even, just to get to know them, spend a little time with them, actually is a positive thing in people's lives. And unfortunately, when it comes to most secularization, they don't have something to replace that. They don't have a club, a book club, or fucking any kind of thing that actually induces community. And until it does, I don't think it's going to be competitive with religion. I think that's what a lot of people are discovering, is that secularism just isn't competitive.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think too, we have to maybe look at the individual demographics of all the other categories besides the nuns. And I think what we're seeing is a fast growth within Islam. And I think a lot of people who talk about this will say that Islam is, and I wish Ali were here to sort of nod his head at this when I'm saying this, or shake his head, or whatever the case might be. But I think a lot of people see it as a sort of a black and white religion that provides clear answers, whereas over the last couple hundred years, I think Christianity has had to offer a lot of nuance, probably because of its need to survive in an increasingly secular society. I don't know what all of the reasons are for that, but it does seem as if Islam, in terms of what is permissible and what isn't, is super clear about what it's supposed to do. One of the things Catholicism has been criticized for is that it has all of these sort of archaic rules that you have to follow. But one of the things I like about it is that there are clear steps for me to follow, right? Even though they might seem sort of irrelevant to the purpose of them, right? But there are, I can go to a prayer bead that'll have specific words that I have to recite. And when I do, it makes me feel better, even though logically I know that there are probably other ways to achieve the same effect. It's pretty, it gives me something that I can train my mind with that's going to make me feel better about who I am. And I don't think that's something else besides the socialization aspect that Ty talked about. That's something else that we don't have an equivalence for on the right. I think, it was Foucault who said that we've replaced the confessional with the therapist. But I'm not sure that enough of us go to therapy. Yeah, but I'm not sure enough of us go to therapy in order to get that sort of same transference of function. And so, I still go to the confessional. I guess I'm old-fashioned that way.
I want to say it's absolutely people are looking for something. I think that with these last two elections, the presidential election, we can really see a big difference, right? Like after the Republican election, I felt like I saw immediately a lot of people on the Republican side go back to the faith. I mean, like the same thing here with the Dems. They lost. They seem to be lost. They're looking around. They're confused. They've had 16 of the last 20 years have been Dem leaders in the presidential office, and things haven't improved in the way they have. And when they have gotten their way, they become more depressed because of it, right? So, like when I'm looking here and seeing all these things, it's pretty clear to me, especially when I see Christianity actually growing worldwide, that actually what I said, everything I said earlier is 100% accurate. And part of the reason Christianity has been stifled here in America is because there's been this big persecution of Christians within the social media, within like online spaces, where anything a Christian does, oh, that's evil, that's barbaric, how dare they think this way, how dare they have their own beliefs. And then simultaneously, while most of the Muslims believe the same thing, or worse, they like somehow excuse that and justify it because, hey, they're a minority group and they're going to vote with the Dems, and instead of sitting here and like they'll just let them attack the Christians. It's really crazy to me that like we're really arguing whether or not that's the case when it's so clear that's this. So I'm gonna make a hypothesis too.
That or worse is why Muslims aren't conservatives. Gibbs,
sure.
That little or worse that you fucking toss.
Or worse. Hey, that's fair. That's fine. But see, and here's what I'm gonna make a hypothesis as well, Tiberius. I agree. I think that the nuns is gonna keep going down. I think more and more people are going to turn to religion because they're just learning that everything the left wants is only made to enslave you to the party, cause depression, and destroy this country. And at least the Christians are trying to like, do something good in the world while all they want is to destroy it.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
God, there's so many things I want.
There's
so many things I want to respond to. I don't even know.
I want to let
I
want to let Ancom get in, and then Ollie, you hit it.
Okay. The one that's sticking in my brain is about what Gibbs said, where we will criticize Christians, or we will criticize certain things that people do, citing Christianity as their reason, but then not do the same thing with Muslims. The difference there is people who claim to be Christian are the ones that are predominantly in control of this country and in control of the policy, not Muslims. The second thing you mentioned was that Democrats have been in control for 16 out of the last 20 years. It's actually been 12 since the last 20 years begins at, 2004. So Bush was president for 4, Trump was president for 4. Get your facts right. As far as the rest of the shit that people have been bringing up, I think what we're talking about here with Ty mentioned community, and Rich didn't say it specifically, but he was talking mostly about ritual, right? These are two mechanisms by which people gain comfort within our current society, and I agree, secularism doesn't really have a good replacement for these at this time. So that might, assuming the observations and speculations we're making here are accurate, might be a good explanation for that, and might be a good critique of secularism, in that, people who are looking to foster a more secular society need to work harder at providing the replacements for the kind of mechanisms that do bring comfort. And as Rich quoted Foucault saying, the confessional has become the therapist couch. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think that developing more replacements for those ritualistic and communitarian exercises to help people deal with the social needs that they have is something that secularists could work better on doing, and might be able to turn the trend again if it exists around.
All right, Ali.
Yeah, so the way I see it is like it's like a tradition versus progression versus like the progressives, right? So it's like everyone thinks that the people that are religious are like slightly less civilized in the fact that like they don't have like logical or scholarly arguments for what their belief is just like faith, right? But like tradition isn't the enemy of progression. But like, to be fair, progressives in the left have lost out on the religious vote. They're kind of losing out on the minority vote because they keep pushing out these people that hold true to traditions, that have their own beliefs, and it's like the pendulum swung the other way, where now like the atheists have kind of like are like reversible. They're bullying the Christians or like the Muslims or whatever it may be now, because like for so long it's like they've been like bad, like it's been anti-LGBT and anti so on and so forth. So it's like now you've pushed those people away. So it's like I don't know. It's atheism is just a new religion, or like politics has just become a new religion. That's just the way I see it.
I think it was always religious, but like secularism does have religions,
Mhm.
or at least by my viewpoint that they do, and those are liberalism, fascism, and communism. They're all secularistic religions. They are even worse because they're in some ways they're humanistic. Is that they actually believe like humans are
They're
almost
progressive religions
maybe in some ways
versus
although I don't know
traditional
if-
religions. That's kind of like what
Okay,
I'm saying.
okay,
It's
sure.
like a progressive
Oh,
versus
okay.
religious
Okay,
thing.
if you want to do that, I think that bastardizes the term progressive to the point where it's a little ridiculous. But what I want to get into is that if you look at these structures, is that I largely have a huge problem with secular humanism now, because in some of the ways it actually not embodies but correlates very strongly with some really horrible shit that we've done in the last century when it comes to these ideas. If you believe that humans are actually, kind of semi-divine and capable instead of flawed in the way that the Christians put forward, which is why I believe the fact that we are sinners is actually kind of wise, is that you believe that humanity can rewrite the human condition. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've seen communism and fascism be so horrible, is that they believe that if you have, in the terms of fascists, God's chosen people that are like the true kin and our brother kin, where we don't really need the confines of democracy to actually keep us in check, yeah, we do all kinds of horrible shit. And then, of course, communism being almost the exact opposite, a religion about equality that should be basically expanded by the sword. Yeah, it's incredibly horrible. So we definitely know secularism can do this. We know humanism can go down incredibly horrible tracks. But I will at least agree with Alex, where, yeah, a lot of modern religious people are kind of hypocrites. The Christians have a word for this. I think I'm using it right, but literally most modern Christians would be called the Pharisees now. Is that they practice a religion, but they don't really understand anything about it, and they don't really they don't even know what they're preaching. It's kind of wild, but I think that's actually true.
Which is why, to be fair, I think there's been a big to Gibbs's point. In this country, they've been shitting on Christians to the point where no one wants to like claim Christianity, and which is why I think Islam is on the rise, because people actually like defend and stick to like whatever it may be, right? Well, agree with it or not, people seem to stick to their like beliefs when it comes to like that religion, and that's kind of like a strong foundation for a lot of people to rely on or fall back on.
So I'm going to
It's
say
definitely
Ty
more-
gave us a perfect segue into the next topic. So I'm going to go ahead and load up the next topic. Is cultural Christianity a cop-out or a cure? The rise of cultural Christianity. In an earlier blog, I noted with surprise the growing number of people who grieve the loss of what Christianity has historically brought to bear on culture, who themselves are not Christians. For example, in an interview with the LBC in London, famed atheist Richard Dawkins admitted that he mourned the loss of much of what he reflects the Christian faith in the world. After this came another lament, written by the self-described agnostic Derek Thompson from The Atlantic. As an agnostic, I've spent most of my life thinking about the decline of faith in America in mostly positive terms. Organized religion seemed to me beset by scandal and entangled in noxious politics. So I thought, what is there really to mourn? Only in the past few years have I come around to a different view. Maybe religion, for all of its faults, works a bit like a retaining wall to hold back destabilizing pressure of American hyper-individualism, which threatens to swell and spill over in its absence. For such sentiments has come the rise of cultural Christianity. Dawkins now says that he would consider himself a cultural Christian. I do think we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer, but there is a distinction between a believing Christian and a cultural Christian. I love hymns and Christmas carols. I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos, and I feel that we are a Christian country in that sense. I would not be happy if, for example, we lost all our cathedrals and our beautiful parish churches. The nature of cultural Christianity is not hard to grasp. Consider that in the UK, only 1% attend a Church of England service, yet 46.2% describes themselves as Christian. The divide is no doubt fueled by individuals such as author Philip Pullman, who is a self-professed Church of England atheist. Against the frightening tide of the rise of Islam, many see something like atheism alone as being too weak to combat such threats. Hersey Ali writes that a desire to uphold the legacy of Judeo-Christian tradition could serve as a unifying story, or as Dawkins put it, if he had to choose between Christianity and Islam, he would choose Christianity every single time. It seems to me to be a fundamentally decent religion in a way I think Islam is not. How do we feel about this? Starting with Gibbs.
I mean, so what is the question? Is it a cop out? Is that what the question is?
Is it a
Is it
cop out or a
is
cure?
it serious?
I like somewhere in between. I guess it's the middle. Like, I think that people go through different phases a lot of times in life. I would say, like, I probably fall in the culturally a Christian category to some extent, even though I don't like practice. You know, I have like a ton of Bible knowledge. You know, I don't really go to church though. Like every once in a while, I do. You know, I like officiated weddings. I hang out. Like, I kind of share a lot of belief systems with them. However, you know, I'd be like culturally Christian, even though I'm not ever an active participant. I think people go through these. I feel like at different points in people's lives, they like if they're culturally Christian, they may move way more Christian over time. They move back, like the opposite way, depending or whatever. So I won't go as far as say it's a cop out. As far as if it's like a bull against other religions like Islam or cultural shifts, I would say yes, it absolutely is to like identify a sense of community. You know, like there's idea that like we're gonna come together, we have the shared history, whether it's Christian, whether it's whatever, you know, is something that people do latch onto. It's a shared community across like long distances as well. You know, I have cousins that are Church of Christ in like, you know, I don't know, Alabama. You know, they're still Church of Christ, just share beliefs. Their issues are similar to my issues. There's like definitely some kind of bond. So yeah, I think it's somewhere in between. I think it just depends on what person that people are in people's lives, and I think it's absolutely useful because you know there are, despite even me being the king of degeneracy that I am, problems with when degeneracy goes too far, and we're just accepting of everything. I mean, like we don't even know what a woman is. People are identifying as furries. I mean, it's crazy. Like we can't even agree on science. The ideology that people like on the left has infiltrated all our higher institutions and are brainwashing people to sound like Alex over here, where they actually present no facts and then argue that I don't. Even though I'm the most fact check guy on the panel, I'm the only one providing sources. No big deal. And it's pretty clear to me that they'll say something's factual and then just like fugazi it. And this is what cultural Christianity is a bulwark against. It's against this evil from the left that's like invaded all of our society.
All right, Rich.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very broad tent, this idea of being cultural Christian, right? Like the first time I ever heard the term cultural Christian was after that big mass murderer in Norway. You know who I'm talking about? Killed all those guys on the beach or whatever. Like, killed dozens of people, if not close to 100 people. And when they asked him, it was because he said he hated immigration, that it was taking away from the fundamental Christian nature of Norway. And he was himself an atheist, but he considered himself a cultural Christian, which was really just shorthand for being white in his case. So you can use that term as a catch-all, and it's really hard for me to characterize you on one end of the spectrum or another. But I do think that there are a lot of people who call themselves cultural Christians who really do, like, just to tie into the previous topic, who really do sort of see some sort of cultural identity. They wrap their identity in this religion, but they can't really make any arguments for like a God to exist. They can't really like cross that sort of logical barrier, but they do see a lot of the benefits that their culture like has with them. Now, as far as the cultural Christianity that Dawkins is talking about, I sort of understand, especially since he's in the UK, because a lot of what they believed, you know, it's interesting, they never really had a revolution into democracy. They're about the only major Western country that didn't achieve it that way. They did it slowly over time, over the centuries, right? They did have Cromwell, but it didn't take. Over the centuries, they sort of evolved into democracy, and it was guided to a large degree by like Anglican, you know, churchgoers. So I can see, especially in the UK, how he doesn't want to let go of that tradition. How there are a lot of aspects to that tradition that they don't want to let go of, even if they see an actual literal deity as something that they can't like you sort of prove scientifically. So to that degree, I think that it should be analyzed on a case by case basis, just like being a member of a religion or not being a member of a religion can be. It's hard for me to characterize like this move towards cultural religious identity as being wholly good or wholly bad. I think that there's more to it than that.
Ali.
All right. Okay. So I like it. I think it's good, right? Though I do have my gripes with Christianity and Christians at times, but it's okay. I have gripes with all religions, but I think it's a bridge to religion, which I do believe is ultimately just community building. Islam is particularly in like the UK is really taking over hard. But every account I've ever seen of someone speaking about it is like they always touch on like the communal aspect that they see within like Muslim communities, right? I think these Christian, like, culturally Christian communities should adapt some of these same like values, because with Muslim communities tends to be like Muslim or like South Asians or Arabs or South Asians, right? And these we're kind of an inviting. We like to feed. We're good with food. We like to have a good time, tea, and laugh, right? So it kind of like really works in well. So anyone who feels lost and sees themselves within like a Muslim community, if they're getting something to eat, they see the joy and they see the and it helps. So me personally, I don't want to see Muslims take over like the West, or Muslims take over churches, or everyone convert to Islam. Though if that's what people want to do, if Christians and atheists are feeling like, hey, let's fucking convert, I'm not gonna fight against it. But at the same time, I think churches are beautiful, right? I love driving around, like especially I'm from Detroit right now. There are so many old beautiful churches, and they're like absolutely some of my favorite sites to like walk and see. And one day I want to go see like the churches in France and the churches in Europe, like in Europe. These things are amazing. I don't want like these things are beautiful, and the tradition is like valuable. It's important. So I agree with the person when he says like, yeah, maybe I'm not a believer, but the culture of within that comes from Christianity or like within it is very important, and they doesn't want to lose it. I think this is a good thing.
Ali, you live in Michigan?
Yeah.
Oh, same here, dude. What?
Big base. What up, man?
Yeah, send me a message sometime and let me know what part.
I got you. Yeah, hell yeah. Well, right now I'm in Massachusetts, but
okay, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, hey, same here.
Who said same here? Oh, there we go. What up?
Yeah.
Small world.
Can't avoid us.
I'm sorry. I just had to ask that question. Like he said, Detroit is like, oh wait, because I live around here, dude. So
yes, but Massachusetts is a much smaller state, so it'll probably be easier for us to get together if we want to.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
look at this community building, baby. That's what we like to see.
Without religion, it's amazing.
Tiberius.
Powered by Islam.
All right. I think it's. I actually agree with Gibbs to a point here. I think it's both. I think it's a little bit of fake it till you make it. I think it's a little bit of hey, like a little bit of conceding ground. So I'll put it this way: I'm gonna say the jury's still out when it comes to this particular idea, because there's some levels where it just might be a half-hearted attempt to fix some of the problems of secularism. It might be a half-hearted or an actual attempt to fix some of the things that we have problems with within Christianity. I'm at the point personally where I think Christianity needs another reformation if it's gonna remain competitive and survive. There's just too much of the problem where it's now contradictory to its own religion. But if it can get past that, if you can have a synthesis of like some secular values and some Christian values, and we can kind of like, drop a couple things here, drop a couple things here. Cool, we've got like Christianity 2.0, which has happened before. Then yeah, I think this religion gets rebooted for another 500 years and we'll be good to go. But I don't know if this is it. But it might be the start of it. So that's kind of where I'm at.
All right, Alex.
So when I think of the term cultural Christian, when Richard Dawkins talk about like, I don't want to see any of these churches torn down. Well, I agree, simply because like I've been in Europe and some of those churches are beautiful. They are gorgeous to look upon because they took hundreds of years. And there are some like mosques around the world that have taken hundreds of years to build. They are gorgeous. And there's Buddhist temples and whatnot. They've taken hundreds of years. They are gorgeous. We don't want to tear stuff like down because it's part of the historical context. It's like it's sort of like the Parthenon in Greece. That has nothing to do with like any organized religion that's still around today, essentially. But we don't take them down because they are such a high important cultural mark. I mean, yeah, tourist attraction doesn't like take away from it essentially. But the thing is, like, they're such an important part of the historical value to it. I mean, for crying out loud, I mean, you got like, you know, churches like in Cologne, Germany, that took like hundreds of years to build essentially. You wouldn't want to see that torn down because it's such a beautiful historical marvel. Now, when it comes to the whole concept of like, you know, cultural Christian, I think it's just kind of like a term that gets used as like, listen, I'm going to cherry pick these parts of the Bible and just adopt that essentially. Because the fact of the matter is, like, when you ask somebody what do they mean by Christian, it's kind of like a vague term. You could be talking about Baptist, you could be talking about Southern Baptist, you could be talking about Episcopal, you could be talking about like evangelical. They have all different terms, but like again, it kind of goes back to like there's no one set standard. They say they follow the Bible, they cherry pick what parts of the Bible to follow. So what exactly do they mean by, you know, a cultural Christian essentially? Do they mean just like, you know, take care of your fellow neighbor essentially? Does it mean like, you know, feeding the homeless? Does it mean just celebrating Christmas even though Christ wasn't born on the 25th of December? He was actually born at a different time, but it's just the one that's most culturally celebrated because it was taken from the pagan religion essentially. I mean, the thing is like when people say cultural Christian, what exactly do they mean by that? I mean, are they just cherry picking certain parts of the Christian religion and saying, you know what? Those are the parts I like. But the thing is, you could take those same examples from any religion. You could take it from the Quran. You could take it from the Torah. You could take it from the Buddhist. You could take it from the satanic 11 rules for Earth, essentially. They're the same kinds of principles, essentially. So, again, what is this concept of a cultural Christian? That's what I would like to know. So, go ahead.
Oh,
All right, Eucharist.
Yeah, cultural Christianity is based. It's awesome. I'm gonna go hard for that. Both in the sense of like I like the Christian marks on culture that you all are talking about aesthetically, and in the sense that I like the effects that it has. But I don't. Wouldn't want to purely argue from the sort of utility of it. There's a quote from. There's a really good essay by T.S. Eliot called "The Idea of a Christian Society." And he says that he thinks it's a dangerous inversion to basically like try to argue for the truth of Christianity from the usefulness of its morals rather than to prove the moral teachings from the truth of Christianity. And so I wouldn't want to do that. I do think right before we switch topics, right, somebody was saying, well, you know, yeah, I guess, you know, secularism just hasn't really given us the kind of substitutes that we want, that, you know, it doesn't quite pull off yet the things that Christianity does. And I would suggest that, like, to the extent that non-religious people do find the sort of benefits of that kind of communal practice that we do see in religion, it happens in societies that are already largely religious. And when we see a decline in sincere religion, we see a decline in these sorts of like parallel communal institutions that can provide those benefits. I'm not optimistic about secularism providing, for example, a kind of thick communal foundations that give you these sorts of informal, ritualistic communal ties that hold up over the long term. I think you need a community of at least participation, if not sincere belief in that. And so I really like T.S. Eliot on both the topic of culture and Christian society. I think he has some really good ideas on this. One of the things he says elsewhere in his another essay called Notes Towards the Definition of Culture is he thinks one of the really, you don't have a culture basically if you don't have a religious communal life. As those things fall apart, they fall apart together. And what a religious communal life looks like is it doesn't require everybody to be fully bought into the religion. It doesn't even require everybody to like intellectualize the religion. It does mean there's a significant number of people who do understand sort of what's going on, even if they don't believe it, and they're participating in the life of it so they could explain it. And so this is the kind of cultural Christianity I think we're hearing like from Dawkins. Like Dawkins, as much as I don't like him and as much as I think he's kind of a philosophical and theological imbecile, he's gone to enough church in his life to where he could probably tell me the parts of an evensong and things like this. Like he knows the bits and pieces of it that like make him a more sincere cultural Christian than somebody who just grew up in the Bible Belt but has never been regular at church dinner. So yeah, cultural Christianity is based. I think it's awesome. More of it, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Eucharist. All right, Ancom.
So, what everyone has been calling here cultural Christianity, I consider to be more culturally European or culturally pagan, because I think the vast majority of the norms and traditions that we might refer to as culturally Christian have their origins in pre or peri-Christianity Europe. From the myriad of cultures around, early first millennium Europe. So I don't think they're all that tightly tied with Christianity. As far as what Eucharist said relating to my comment about secularism needing better community forming outfits, the thing is there are plenty of communities around the world that manage to do this without a strong religious component being involved. And so I think that the fact that we have sort of put all of our eggs into one basket, in that all of these community building exercises have been so heavily based in religious tradition, is part of the problem, and we can absolutely find ways to replace those without relying on that religious backbone at all. So I don't think it's necessary to have religion to have those communal sorts of traditions, and they can in fact be built in parallel with, and hopefully eventually replace, the particular organized religious connections that they have.
All right.
I mean,
so we're going to open up. The
we've had
conversation.
we've had a few hundred years since the Enlightenment, and a lot of people trying to do that sort of replacement you're talking about, and I just don't see it happening as successfully as you're suggesting it could or has. I mean, you have, I'm not denying the existence of like parallel communities and secular communities and things like this, but in terms of the like long-term sticky benefits that we see from thick communal religion, I just don't see it. I mean, like these like philosophical minds in all these eras try to do it in their literary circles and their salons and everything else, and they inevitably fall apart the same way that any like revolutionary group falls apart, or any utopia or anything like that falls apart.
Because they don't try to do it organically is the problem.
Well, Eucharist,
they're trying to force the issue, and I'm suggesting that if we build it organically, it will take time. Yes, because these sorts of changes take, many generations before they really take hold, but it can be done, is all I'm saying.
All right.
I'm less optimistic.
Well, here's the thing: it's like he's actually stated, because like all these same principles that and I actually brought up like, what does cultural Christian actually mean? Because like it's like certain parts that are cherry picked essentially from the Christian religion, but these are the same principles you can actually get from any other religion across the world. And this is basically what you're telling me, is like when you say that like, oh well, cultural Christian is based essentially, well, these same principles that you're saying are fantastic. There's probably other religions and probably other cultures that have a different religion for yours that had the same ideology from this. So how is it you can say that Christianity is the one that's most correct essentially, when it's the same thing that could have been said throughout all of human history? Treat people who want to be treated. It's just like, love thy neighbor, like treat your neighbor as you would want to, essentially. It's
Ollie
like,
wants to answer you.
I want him to answer.
We all want to answer.
Yeah, well, really quick. The difference is mine is true and theirs isn't. But also, you're absolutely right that there are overlapping truths here, and I have no problem with that. So one of my favorite books that I tell everybody to read all the time is Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis, and he's suggesting, yes, there is a core that we can see not just in the West but in the East of moral teaching that he thinks reflects nature and reality, and so we would expect genuine, sincere believers of all types to strike on certain truths if they are just actually true about the world. The difference is that just one of them is, more true than the others in a real developmental way. He points out ways that he thinks Christianity develops some of these moral teachings within the coherent tradition that he sees. But yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable saying, yeah, there are true things that we can find in all these different places. Mine's just right. So yeah.
Let me add, John Paul II wrote a pastoral letter called "Truth Cannot Contradict Truth," and that's another really good one. Where just because you have a religious principle that you're borrowing from a religion doesn't mean that you can't In fact, you even if it's revealed to you, you still have a responsibility to arrive at it through logic alone, because if something is true, then you should be able to arrive at it that way as well.
Eucharist, how can you say yours is correct but Ali's is not correct? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, I'm sorry, he's just wrong.
Because I think mine's correct.
I'm not going to go down an apologetics route. These people want to answer your question too. So
No. It's because I can say
later,
he can say his is correct because that's his faith and his belief, and just in the same way that I can say mine is correct as his, and his is incorrect, and I just have to respect the fact that we disagree. And to the point, that's the culture that he wants preserved, right there. So Ancom was saying that we can say it's white pagan or European pagan culture, whatever, sure. But like, unfortunately, Christianity has adopted these pagan things. So Christmas is a Christian holiday, so on and so forth. And so like that is the culture that wants to be preserved. So when you ask Alex, like, what do you mean by like culture and like Christian culture? It's like it is things like Christmas. It is things like St. Patrick's Day. It is like these little things, these little holidays that Christians have come together, adopted. There's the community aspect that you seem to like disregard, because there is a counterculture to when someone's saying like atheism isn't strong enough to fight the counter, is because the counterculture in this regard would be like Islam, right? In the UK particularly, Islam is pretty big. It's like popular. They're saying wallahi, they're called it's like a popular trendy thing. So like they're already ingrained within like the subculture of like the UK. They have rappers, it's a whole fucking spiel. So like the counterculture is coming in. You see people by the trobes, like in the UK, like converting, or at least kind of joining in within these communities and cultures. And so like to who's the guy that we're talking about? I forget his name in the article.
Hawkins.
Richard Dawkins.
Hawkins, yeah. So like to Hawkins's point, he is kind of, and like to Ancom, he is kind of saying like we're losing this European like culture which comes with Christianity, right? And it's like with all the things that we built, we have these churches that were built, we have these holidays that we celebrate. So it's like, yeah, when you're in that situation, you see a counterculture coming, and that counterculture is popular. Well, then yeah, there is a loss of culture, and then for them, yeah, he believes that this one is correct. That's just a belief, in the same way that like a Republican thinks they're correct, and like to a Democrat, it's like, well, no, you're completely incorrect. It's like you live within the system, but I think you're missing like this huge community aspect that like I think a lot of atheists don't necessarily have, which is to his point, is like atheism isn't strong enough to fight against the counterculture.
I'll go after Gibby. So I'll go after Gibby though.
Well, so you're going to kind of be surprised that I actually think you're like maybe like 60-70% right here in some regard. Maybe on the second part, you kind of lost me in the second half. But the first half, I think you might actually hit the nail on the head, which is your statement was, how do we define what is culturally Christian? I would argue, let's just for funsies, just using this panel, everybody here, including Ali, is culturally Christian. Right? He's got, not because Jesus was a prophet. I'm saying that because we live in a society that's basically based on Christian values to an extent. Like we have like the ideas like thou shalt not murder, eye for an eye. A lot of these, some of them are from other things, but a lot of Western society takes the morality code and legal code from some basis in religion. Right? They even structured like government in similar fashion to how churches and stuff. Like look at like the parish system in Louisiana, for example, and you can look at like England, back in the day, and religion was intertwined. So I would say in some aspect, we are all almost culturally Christian, right? So like I don't know. As far as like what we know is right, I mean, like I guess I really start really differentiating from the past. I mean, I don't think the Assyrians were right when they were skinning people alive and throwing their like skin up on the walls of their cities. I don't think the Aztecs were right when they were eating the tribes that they conquered and sacrificed them to the tune of 88,000 in one day in some locations. I mean, no. So like, yeah, I can say that, but I will say this: there is an answer to determine which one is right, and you're gonna hate this. It's called war. If your God's on your side, then you're gonna win the war. It's really that simple. That's part of the reason why religion keeps coming back. These gods are backing them up. That's really the only explanation I can come up with. And finally, last thing. Here you go. We talked about faith. The core of faith, and this is like a non-meme thing, is taking something like on the fact that, yeah, there's some evidence to support this, but I don't have definitive evidence that can prove this, right? And I'm like taking this leap of faith and like putting my trust in this. And that's a core component of it. And I think that does like separate like maybe the religious Christianity from the cultural aspect. I don't think that these people that are putting their stock in like, hey, these traditional Christian values, these traditional Christian community are like going to have their faith in this community when the rod's tested. But maybe they will if that's like, and that's why they're saying that they are becoming cultural Christians.
It's a bridge to that eventually. They'll eventually become religious. Like Russell Brand went through a whole thing,
Yeah, like I mean, he's a super Christian now.
Yeah, I want to answer this before. I know you want to go, but like okay. Look, I'll just put it this way real quick. I'm going to answer what I think is culturally Christian, and then I'm going to throw a knife at Socio, and I want to actually see how he takes it. So what I think is what I think is culturally Christian is largely the core tenets of what the religion actually preaches, which is one, that people are flawed, right? That they say it is we are sinners, but what it actually means is that humans are just fucked up. right? We're all broken, we're all screwed up, and it's like, yeah, do what Jesus did. Try to be humble, try to be forgiving, and try to be kind, because your neighbor is just as fucked up as you are. And I think there's something incredibly not only wise but incredibly decent to the human condition that embodies. And then it also believes that number two, that empowering evil is actually legitimately a bad thing, even if you're on the sidelines, and you should feel guilty for it. Christianity actually preaches that pretty strongly as well. When you get those, this is how you get a culture that said you as a person deserve the right to vote. Because if you're flawed and I'm flawed, and we're not really sure what the man upstairs actually fucking wants, then we got to figure this shit out together. And this is where Islam doesn't have this. And I am going to take issue with that. Why is it that we Christians develop some of these wonderful institutions while Islam did not? So I'm going to push back a little bit where it's like, yeah, let's everyone convert to Islam. Islam is happier here in the West with Christian values than they are in the land of Islam. So there's your knife.
In some countries, not all. I wouldn't even say like a majority. But one, the reasons why they're happier, we can contest that. A lot of war in their lands and then get taken over to the other lands. So I don't necessarily disagree with you. I don't like theocracies. I'm not a fan. I like democracy, right? It's a big thing. So I don't necessarily. I said this to start. I don't necessarily want like everyone to be Muslim, but if they want to convert, I ain't fighting no one, right? That's the winning team, baby. So like knife taken, but like to your point, I think there are like examples of so like Lebanon is a secular. It's not the greatest government. I'm not gonna sit here and but like, hey, listen, Christian president, Sydney Parliament, and whatever the fuck Shias get. So like there's examples, and then like not for nothing, cut out of Dubai, the whole spiel. Muslims are probably happier there. They got the dope shit over there too, and there's drinking and dogs and everything.
So the best part of Islam is Islamic Vegas, is what we're getting at.
I mean, listen, but where the cash olay is.
Okay.
So yeah. So I definitely got to jump in on this, okay? Because
go ahead, buddy.
We need to kind of come to understanding about this. The reason why I brought up the fact that like you could have the same principles in Christianity and Islam and Buddhism and stuff like that, and then like I got pushed back. It's like, well, somebody has to be right. No,
nope.
Okay. If somebody has to be right, okay, let's understand something, okay? If I was to bring in two people, right, one person that believes the Earth is round and the Earth is flat, and if you say, well, both people make good points, you're probably going to align with a person that's probably objectively fucking wrong, essentially. That's my point. When it comes down to organized religion, nobody seems to be correct. Everybody is wrong when it comes down to organized religion because everybody has the same principles. They just have a different way of going about it, essentially. Therefore, Christians can say, well, I believe in taking care of your neighbor. Well, so do the Muslims. Well, the Muslims are wrong. And the Muslims can say the Christians are wrong, essentially. The fact of the matter is, like, this is the problem, essentially, because when you're focused upon which religion is essentially correct, they're all going to say everybody else is wrong, but mine is the most correct, but they can't say as to why. They just say, oh, well, my book was written thousands of years ago and has never been contradicted, even though that's not necessarily true.
Nobody's saying they can't say as to why. They will make arguments for why. The point of this panel is not for me to be an apologist and try to convince you why mine is correct. I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying somebody has to be right. Right? We might live in Nietzsche's world where all of this is made up, and what's required is some sort of radical value creation. Maybe it's all bunk. Nobody has to be right, but I am. So yeah.
Why? No. Stop. Why are you right though? That's the thing.
I think this is tangential to the cultural Christianity conversation. Hold on.
Why are you right?
I can go through and make.
You gotta let him answer, Alex.
I think there are. Off the top of my head, I think there are good historical evidences for Jesus and his resurrection. I think there are all the blah blah. I can go through the whole thing, right, of why I think I'm right. That's not actually the point of this conversation, though, because so I want to go back to this. Sorry, if you had more to say, I didn't want to cut you off. I just wanted to make sure that we understood. Nobody has to be right. I'm just making the claim that I am right. So. If you had more you wanted to say before I cut you off.
Yeah, I know you cut me off, and I was actually, very, very polite to everybody else. I just want to make that abundantly clear. So the fact of the matter is like everybody says they have to be correct. Their point of view is the most correct, but everybody else that doesn't agree with them is actually wrong. That is the problem. This is why I'm so critical of organized religion, because everybody else is right, but like my religion is correct, but everybody else is essentially wrong. But they can't explain as to why.
Can I give a different answer to that question?
Go ahead,
No,
Rich.
no, you can't actually. Honestly, like I was very polite, was I not?
I mean, yes and no. Rich wants to answer the question. So, Rich?
Okay, go ahead, Rich. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah. So,
Oh,
so you heard a quick answer to you, Chris, which is his like fundamental belief in the resurrection, and that's what does it for him. But if you're going to look for a more cultural Christian answer to that question, I'm somebody who, like, I was raised in fundamentalist Christian, and then I sort of went shopping for religion after that because for a variety of reasons. Part of which is I didn't want to have to give up science in order to like keep my faith. But so I actually wasn't looking for evidence of the supernatural when I was looking for a faith. I was looking at the moral system that I was going to be buying into, and a lot of people buy into their faith because the moral system sort of makes sense to them. And so, to that extent, you're not necessarily looking well. Obviously, I would accept a supernatural answer too if I could like witness a miracle or something that would make my life way easier. But I've never like had an experience like that, and so I think a lot of people then choose their religion based on that. So you can look at a moral system and you can do a Kantian analysis as to what would happen if everybody in the world followed this particular tradition, whatever, and you can come up to a conclusion as to what you think would make what makes the most sense in terms of moral immorality. And I think that that's really the way cultural Christians think when they're attaching themselves to a tradition, because they're not necessarily buying into the supernatural aspect of it. They just want to know, like, essentially how to be a good person. That's what they want to be. And I think that choosing on that basis is at least a little bit rational.
Can I say too?
Morality come from religion? Does morality come from religion, or do you think like morality could come from a society that determines what is moral at the time and then evolves from it?
I think the moral systems that we
like made it
subscribe to were inevitably shaped by religion.
I can. So like at the times, right? Like right now, yes, we don't all agree on like a book, but at the time, no. Morality, like objective morality, we don't have objective morality because we don't have one person or thing that we can point to be like, this person is correct. But at the time there was religion, right? So there was Judaism, there was Christianity, there was Islam, and people pointed to this book or this one source and said, this is the source of more like objective morality, and everyone essentially like agreed to that. And that's why you have so many religious wars, because it's arguments of objective reality and land grabs realistically. So that's like the issue, is that like that is an agreed upon objective morality, which you don't get with atheism.
I think this goes back to
what does that mean exactly?
Well, no, go ahead, Eucharist.
Atheists are like open to like other ideologies, right? Versus like one connected ideology. So like an atheist can be a Republican, a communist, a so on and so forth. They have different ideologies that they follow. Versus like in the times, right? If you're a Christian, you have one set of morality that you follow, which is this book.
So this goes back to the like being correct thing. So you're asking, is religion the source of morality, or is it like culture? Is it something else? I think if you are a certain kind of God believer, you have to believe that there's some ultimate source of morality. But in like the historical sense you're talking, I am fully willing to agree that people find morality from a variety of sources that are sort of, I would call it like a back and forth interplay between religion and culture and all these things. And that's no problem for me. So on the being correct thing, right? I don't think, like you said, the Muslim says love your neighbor, Jesus said love your neighbor. Well, the Muslim guy's wrong. I don't think that, because what Paul says in Romans 2 is that when those who do not have the law, that is non-Jews who weren't raised with these teachings, when they do by nature what the law requires, they're a law to themselves, even though they don't have the law. So they show the work of the law that's written on their hearts. So what he's saying is like, you can do the good thing and the right thing, and you can know the good thing and the right thing, whether or not you were taught it in this religion. That there is ultimately for him a right answer in this story. That is, it's Yahweh, it's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and everything else. But he like, I'm not coming here and saying like the Muslim is wrong about this moral teaching. I'm saying, yeah, we have disagreements about the nature of Christ and salvation and all these other things. So yes, of course, I think I'm right. But when it comes to these questions of like, where does morality come from? Can we agree on it? I think I don't think it would be correct to say that like I just look at the Muslim system and say, well, they're wrong because they're reading it in the wrong book. To the question more broadly of like, what is cultural Christianity? I would just say the punchiest thing I've come up with, just spitballing here, is that it's a culture where Christian ideas and values are taken for granted, widely understood, widely referenced, and widely influential. And so I think that describes most of American history, right? Cultural Christianity would be, for example, when even the most deistic or even possibly atheistic of the founding fathers know the Bible better than most professing believers today, regularly appeal to, we should be praying about this, like Benjamin Franklin does in the Continental Congress. Cultural Christianity is when, from the period of the founding up through the Civil War and afterwards, you have presidents of secular universities saying the point of this university is to raise up good Christians and good citizens. Cultural Christianity is when people are founding seminaries that become the Ivy Leagues and everything else. Like, that's what I would consider to be cultural Christianity. These ideas are just soaked into the soil, and it's just part of it.
But you can, again, you're missing my point. You can actually find these same principles regardless of your religion ideology. But the fact of the matter is, you got to understand something, okay? You can't go back to the founding fathers, essentially. It's like, the founding fathers, they were escaping from like religious persecution, and they believed they could say whatever the hell they want to because they founded this country, essentially. And they say these laws we are implementing in this country are because our founding father believed these things. What did that actually result in exactly? Can you tell me what actually the history, essentially what happened when they took over this country, and like once we won our liberation from the British, what actually happened afterwards? We expanded across the world. What happened across the country?
The founders were secular, though, largely. You're thinking of the people who first came, like the Pilgrims. They were escaping religious persecution. The founders themselves were largely, if not, some of them were downright hostile to religion. Most of them were at the very least secular.
And they were what as well too.
I would fight with most, but but
the fact of the matter is, like, there are people in this country that actually utilized the Bible to justify their ownership of people. Actually, this is 100% true. So you can't tell me this, like, these morals from the Christian Bible, essentially, these are actually. This is why the reason why I brought the no. Stop. Okay, you are not going to interrupt me. Okay. The fact of the matter is,
get your point out, dude. Goddamn.
I'm getting to my point. Just stop talking. Okay. The fact of the matter is like morality is not deemed from any one religion. It's because a society determines it's based upon lessons we have learned in the past. Something we have determined to be moral at one point was deemed immoral, and we have learned from this society. That's where morals come from. It's something that lessons that we have learned, essentially, that has made our society better. So you can't just say, you can just draw all your morality from one book. Is completely false. You could draw inspiration from that. You could take certain lessons, but you could take those same lessons from any religious text, essentially. You could take those same moral principles from the Quran, from the Torah, from the Christian Bible, from Buddhism. You really can. The fact of the matter, that's my entire point.
Two things. One, not all religions agree on what the hell moral is. Hell, we have that problem just among the denominations to some degree. What is more important, though, is like you're kind of going backwards in this conversation, and yet you made my point for me, and it's weird. Religion does not inform morality. Morality informs religion, and we codify our morality into our religion, and that's why we change it whenever we have a problem with it. Remind you that some of the most ardent people who said, hey, like, that shit isn't okay when we came to slavery, were radical Christians. Because they said, like, nah, God would not actually support this shit. I've got issues with how they went about it, but yeah, like if you look at like radical evangelicals in the North and Whigs within Britain, these were the people who actually were some of the most ardent anti-slavers.
Right on the couch.
Well, Quakers. Anyway,
so I'd like to. Actually, I think Alex does hit the nail on the head a couple times here. Again, is like there is no defined morality. I've said this a lot of times. Like the only morality in the world that I truly believe in is like might makes right. Like now, when it comes to like our individual everyday lives, like we have to abide by the people in charge. Do I have to abide by the system in the United States where there's laws and shit? Yeah, because guess what? The U.S. government is much more mighty than I am. The power of democracy is much more mighty than I am. Like there's all sorts of forms of might we can get into that. But like, you can't tell me there's a standard morality. Whenever we have people in Papua New Guinea still eating people. We have people here in the United States telling us there's a morality. It's like, if you do this, you're bad, or Christians are evil because they're bigots because they don't believe in just 59 different genders. That's evil. That's so bigoted. Or vice versa. If you can't tell me what a woman is, then you're evil. So you can't tell me there's some sort of defined morality. Now, whether it comes from, I think that he's right. I don't think that morality comes from religion, right? I think religion is maybe a codified morality, but but it's like people saw what was their normal. They came to accept something as a normal, and it doesn't even have to be better. It's just they started to accept something as a standard, and then that's what we've got created today. Because I mean, how many times have we seen like religious act, for like all sorts of bad stuff? How many times have we seen non-religious thing in it for bad stuff? So yeah, I just don't believe in this overarching concept of morality, and it's really funny to me because I really feel like almost every political system stems from religion or is an answer to religion in some way. Like, right? Like we have communism, socialism. Those are trying to like create the perfect utopia described like in Revelations, right? Where like everybody's socialist, everybody's God gives everything because it's post-scarcity society. They're trying to replicate the golden city without the God figure. So like even like in that sense, everything ties back to religion somehow in that manner. I don't know.
Who wants to deal with
Man
that?
wants to be God.
Yeah,
Leftists,
Rick,
leftists just want to be God.
I don't know if I'm going to address that directly, but I do want to just kind of respond.
Yeah, I just want to say another maybe simpler answer to this is like we, at least in the Catholic Church we talk about tradition with a capital T, and when I think about tradition, I don't think about it as taking like the standards of a particular time and then pushing it forward for all time forever without any changes. Tradition doesn't work that way. Tradition it shares a little bit of identity with the scientific method. That is to say, you keep what works and you jettison what doesn't, and that's how tradition evolves over time, right? So, Gibbs talked about like murder being the thing that Christianity, invented a prohibition for. In fact, prohibitions of murder predate even Moses by about 700 years at the very least. But here's the thing, like when Christianity encounters other religions, people have talked about pagan traditions being inside of Christianity multiple times. Yeah, that's true. And I think that's because of what Eucharist was talking about, where if human beings through their own reasoning can derive it like what's good and what isn't. And when we find through experience that it is true, it gets added in tradition. And we find out when something we believe is not true, it gets jettisoned from tradition. Tradition is not this monolithic block of unchanging beliefs that go on into the future. It's really more those things that are true are able to survive into the future, right? Just like in the scientific method, those things that turn out to be true never change, right? So 2 + 2 is 4. It was, centuries ago, and it still is today, and that's something that like carries forward in our. It's same thing with moral tradition. So my argument really is for just this notion of tradition. When you jettison all of that, which often happens, I don't think it happened in the American Revolution. I do think it happened in the French Revolution. You get this jettisoning of all beliefs. You were throwing away the baby with the bathwater, and that's, I think, what even cultural Christianity has going for it is that it's people who don't necessarily believe, but they want to keep that tradition, going.
Well, here's the thing.
Hold on.
Hype train. Sorry.
Thank you all for the hype
hold on,
train
one
and the
second.
generosity. Go ahead, please, Ancom.
Hype train.
Yeah. So Rich cut me off, and I wanted to. So I'm going to address something he said about science, because you said in science, what is true is always true. The problem is science, at least in its the way that it should be done, I think, never necessarily declares that it has truth. Mathematics can have proofs, but those proofs are always based on axioms. Axioms are things which are accepted as true, but which have no proof to them. And so then you get to things like Gödel's incompleteness theorem, where there are things that we know are true that we can't ever prove. Right? Science is a little bit more careful with that. In science, you never prove a hypothesis. You simply fail to disprove a hypothesis, right? You fail to invalidate. You fail to falsify. So we don't, science doesn't necessarily claim to have truth. It just gives us the best way that we have to be able to make reliable predictions based on our observations and experiments.
Yeah, just real quickly,
Wait.
The response to that is that we have something like that too within religion. Like I think Eucharist can verify this is to be the case. That Augustine in his on Genesis, he talks about how when we find out something to be true through the natural world, and it contradicts our interpretation of Scripture, we have to change our interpretation of Scripture to adapt to that new finding in reality. He would have said science if science existed at that time in the same way that it does today. But ultimately, what he meant is if there's something in the natural world that we know to be true, and we have to, it's faith that has to adapt to that truth.
Well,
Right. So I think we have there's something in common with the.
Well,
with
the
science,
thing is,
right?
it hasn't changed. That's the fact. That's the thing that's interesting is because, like, at one point, somebody said, like, okay, God created the earth in 6 days, and then the seventh day He rested. But nothing has been updated regarding that. Because here's the thing: faith is not based in logic. Faith is based upon belief. Like, for example, I can believe that my football team is going to win next Sunday, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be true. Faith, logic is based upon what 100% can be proven. Like this is the thing. Like anybody can say is like, oh well, I can prove everything that happens in the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, whatnot. But the thing is, I have not seen any evidence to prove all these. Like that's why it's based upon faith. This is why people have faith within their religion. It's because it's based upon something they cannot prove. This is why a lot of us are skeptics, essentially. It's not because we are downgrading people for believing. It's simply because we can actually talk about things that can be proven or hypothesized, but we can actually have some studies that to kind of back up our arguments. But, when people say, oh, well, I could prove the existence of A, B, and C, but yet they don't produce it. Like, if you're saying, like, oh, well, these things have to be updated in the Bible, then why haven't they? Why has this book never
It's not that the Bible's been updated, but the way that we interpret it has. Like we accept evolution in the Catholic Church, for instance. That's something that's been updated in our traditions. It is true that religion updates itself more slowly. I mean, we're talking about, in the case of Christianity, a 2,000-year-old tradition. But it does change based on the facts on the ground, based on the more information that we get. But I think there's a value in changing more slowly too. Religion can be the ballast that stops us from changing too quickly as a result of scientific advancement.
But yes, sometimes religion can change based on updated knowledge. Unfortunately, if we took it as a sum total of denominations, I think we would find that most, or at least a very large plurality of Christian denominations today don't outright accept evolution or
fundamentalism is a different matter, I think.
Yeah, but I think fundamentalism is still an important part of this discussion because the other thing I was going to mention
it's massive, because it's very large.
Yeah. Morality is something that I don't think I agree with anyone here about where it comes from necessarily, because I think it is largely what we make it with a certain amount of an evolutionary, component that we as a social species have developed. So there's an evolutionary instinct, I think, to, generally avoid killing one another because that tends to be bad for the social group and for the species as a whole. And then there are more specific, moral edicts that we tend to decide upon because we see that they produce outcomes that we like within society or don't, as the case may be. And so we change those to reflect our own preferences of the kind of societies we want. I don't think we necessarily need religion. Religion can, has found ways to sort of catalog these things. As Ty was saying, they are the codification of a lot of these moral ideas. But I don't think morality necessarily comes from religion. There are many other ways to get to things that we would all broadly understand to be moral without that, and that kind of gets back to what Rich was saying with being able to reach it via logic. So I think that there's a lot that we're attributing to religion unnecessarily, and I think that is at least a concerning pattern of rhetoric.
So my issue with that is to an extent I agree, except I feel like the big three came in and civilized whatever violence came from like the pagan religions, right? So like
I mean, yeah, but you can also say the same thing about Buddhism and Hinduism. Like,
Yeah.
they were big in their own locations.
yeah, I
and-
don't necessarily disagree.
I don't think the big three of the Abrahamic religions are better at like civilizing people. What it really came down to is that the big three are particularly Christianity, Islam are amazingly good at proselytizing, and they're amazingly good at I don't know what a word I want to use, but like they're zealous. They're
So I
actually
put it in,
incredibly
so I
zealous
put it in
religions.
quotes. So like well, because he was like, because Ankam was saying like, we would have come to some type of system without religion. Well, pre-religion, we had paganism, and they were sacrificing people, and there was a lot of
Paganism
going
is
down
a
and pillaging.
religion, though. Paganism
Sorry?
is a form of religion. So,
Yeah.
like, you're saying pre-religion we had paganism. No, like, you can go all the way back to animism and still, in some cases, call that a religion.
So I'm saying we've always,
Right.
okay, so then we've always had some form of religion, and like, so like to say that we would get to a point that without religion we would have some type of morality that doesn't kind of like come downwind of the religion, like we'd have to start at zero and then see from there. But anything up until now would be like something we base everything on the past, which would be some type of religion, if according to you,
Just a quick add to that. You know what's really interesting is you see this a lot in people that have professions that deal with death quite a bit, like specifically like where their lives are on the line, like soldiers and like cops, is they turn to what's the word like where they become superstitious, right? And you can see that like for whatever reason, when people are encountering like death a lot, like they go towards this idea that there's something higher power or there's something that's controlling them, whether it's a lucky charm, whether it's a ritual, whether it's like a god, whether whatever. And I think that's almost like fundamentally ingrained in the human psyche to an extent. And so when we try to like push that out like completely, I think that really actually harms like humans. Like I don't think, for whatever reason, like not being able to believe in something higher than yourself, like it hurts you. And like that's kind of why like I jokingly memed earlier, yeah, we know which religion was right. It's the ones where they killed everybody and survived. Like I know we did that, but it's because these gods, whether they were real or not, like inspired these people and like to like reach new heights of like either strength or might or like maybe like proselytization or maybe like success in the field to an extent that these other religions did not do this. And so to some extent, like it's even almost like scientifically proven, these religions make you quote unquote better as like a human, and as a human we are one bloodthirsty race. And you know what, I just gotta say, like
we do be killing people. We do be killing
real
people.
quick and say, Gibbs, what did I just say about the fact that science doesn't prove things?
Well, listen, I listen. Let me tell you something. I love the expression "Don't look a gift horse in the mouth."
Is that the general belief? Is that the general belief, Ancom? Do people believe that science doesn't prove?
Hold on, I posted that
or...
Always Sunny video, and it's a joke. It's like science is always right until it's a liar. Sometimes,
like the Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Yeah,
science doesn't prove things; it simply fails to disprove hypotheses.
Yeah, that's because you don't have you're not like just like a blind faith believer in science, but there's a lot of people who are just blind faith believers in science, right?
What other people believe about science who are not familiar with the philosophy of science is not really relevant to
so religion.
Y'all are fucking triggering the shit on me. Like, let me in here for a second.
That's fine.
I don't like putting science in a religion. I don't even like putting it into philosophy because I don't think it is. I think what it strictly is a doctrine, and why it is the reason why it pisses off most philosophies and religions is because it actually is incredibly adept at telling us how the physical world reacts. But what it is terrible at, and what religion needs to actually poke at, is that it is horrible at telling us what morality is. It's the scientific doctrine gives us very
to have more like an insight as to morality, though.
Okay, to some degree, I will say like anyone who is a decent scientist would agree with you, and I believe that. The problem is there is a lot of people who have kind of deified science and actually do treat it like a religion. And there's a level where
all that scientism and like I agree.
No, you can't treat science as a religion.
The Democratic Party.
They do.
I'm gonna say it is.
You cannot treat science as religion.
Not science, but scientism is. And the problem is there is a scientism out there,
Well,
and there is
what
a
do you mean
level
by
where people who treat.
Would you say they're culturally scientism? It's
No.
No, okay. Scientism is this mental trap that people get stuck in, where they believe that like science can prove everything, science can explain everything, everything that science
Eventually.
everything that comes out of science is just automatically true, and they are specifically taking a position that science itself opposes. Like the scientific method, the scientific
I
methodology.
feel like a lot of Gen Z atheists, or like those conflict,
No, I would say this is actually
the
more
Gen
of
Z
a-
the techies.
I think this is actually more of a millennial problem, because, or at least
I
this
could not
was
see
a
this
millennial
being
problem,
millennial.
because I saw a shitload of like militant atheists. But I remind you, my experience is literally seeing the rise of like YouTube atheism back in like 2008 to 2012,
The whole
where
What
you
was
had
that
video
Dawkins
Bill Nye
and whatnot.
Who did Bill Nye debate? That was, I think, the rise of scientism. When Bill
Ken
Nye
Ham.
debated that
Ham?
dude, yeah, that was the rise of scientism.
Okay, like
Like,
I mean,
I think that was a
Oh, that did a great
result of scientism. Like,
Well, we have to understand something is, again, like, I'm not saying that like science is the end all be all. It's based upon what we can already prove. Something that has already been proven, essentially. That's like what science is. And if they're wrong about something, they can always just go back to the drawing board and say, admit when they're wrong about something, and then just like, okay, so we're wrong about this. So let's go back to the drawing board and then just like draw a different conclusion. That's the beautiful thing about science. But like,
what
the
did I
problem with
just
that-
say?
Wait,
Had
about
it allowed to
science
just be
and
wrong.
proof?
wait, let me hit this, because there's a
Well-
part where like science is better at this, but it's actually as flawed as a lot of the religions are. If the religions actually are forged to deal with something long term, they either have to acquiesce to it or they literally get beaten to death. This is literally Galileo and heliocentrism, right? Literally the Earth revolving around the sun. The church fought it for like 100 years, and then they eventually lost. On the other side of
Weirdly enough,
that,
they
though,
were finally
sci-
Copernicus said it.
yeah, science. Fair.
We apologized in
Science-
the 1990s.
Science does this too, just not as bad, right? Great example is that we had continental drift theory long before we proved it. And there was a lot of people who was like, nah, there's no way the continents fucking move. Get fucked. Science actually shows the value of conservatism, or at least Burkean conservatism, where it's like, hey, look,
Oh God,
we,
here we
bel-
go.
we believe that this thing is true because we have like theory and evidence to support it. But your new theory, if you can withstand the barrage, if you can validate it, then yeah, we will adopt it. We will accept it. Science is actually naturally conservative.
I wouldn't say.
I heard
said-
you say Burkean
know,
3 times and
I-
spin in your
I-
chair. Connor pops up in the
No,
panel.
yeah, you know he's wrong when anytime they use the word Burkean, it's a catch-all for I got nothing. That's the
So
secret.
as we are starting to get
fucking
overtime,
Christ.
I'm gonna say we're gonna get ready to go to open. So if anybody has some final statements or wants to get an outro, by all means, do your thing.
All I'm gonna say is these guys are just too jealous of the true power of Burkean conservatism. That's all I'm saying.
Based.
Yeah,
Um,
the power of losing.
I don't know how long I'll stay. I'll hang out for a little bit, but I guess I'm still like hung up on I don't know why. I guess we're hung up on certain things, like the idea that certain other people could agree with me on the same moral things I believe for different reasons does not bother me. The idea that different religions could even agree with that does not bother me. I would rather go hang out with Ali's ancestors in the medieval Middle East than hang out in a couple Germanic pagan tribes. Okay, like they're closer to what I think is good and true and beautiful than the people who are doing the baby sacrifices and stuff. Right? That's very. I would rather be in the culturally Islamic world than the Germanic pagan world, and I would rather be in the culturally Christian world than the culturally Islamic world. Like I can have a ranking of preferences here, right? And so on the question of like, yeah, we can, what Incom was saying, right? That we can perhaps, he's contending, and again, I think this is true. You don't have to get your morals from a book. I agree. I think I thought I made that clear. But there's, I think, a difference between somebody sort of reasoning themselves to correct moral principles and somebody coming to believe them. So this is why one of the utility functions of cultural Christianity is that it teaches you to feel something, perhaps without even understanding it. And I think that's a good thing, not a bad thing. So to the question of faith and reason, I disagree that faith is as divorced from reason as we're saying. But to the extent that faith is taught based on feels, I don't think that's a bad thing. So another quote from Lewis from Abolition of Man. One of the things that he says is that no justification of virtue
will enable a man to be virtuous without the aid of trained emotions. The intellect is powerless against the animal organism. And he says, I love this, is one of my favorite quotes. He says he would rather play cards with a man who is skeptical about the whole ethics thing, but had been raised to believe a gentleman does not cheat, than to play cards with a moral philosopher who has been brought up among card sharkers, right? These are different people, because the one dude really deeply believes, because he was brought up and taught, an honorable gentleman does not cheat. That's a more reliable person than the freaking moral philosopher who reasoned himself to the abstract principle, right? I would rather have that person, and I think that's something that a function that religion serves. Yeah.
And then with
Yes, yeah, I
with-
disagree with that, because I think that, like, I think I would rather have people that are capable of reasoning themselves into useful moral concepts than people who were simply indoctrinated into it due to their upbringing.
Okay, when you sit down in your high school chemistry class, do you understand anything except what the textbook and the teacher are telling you? You accept it on some sort of testimony and authority, right? There's a similar process that happens with the formation of religious belief to what happens with the formation of any belief that goes beyond your immediate observation, beyond anything that you can immediately test and prove. So I don't like the idea that religion is in this like weird divorced category where me teaching you a moral principle that you believe on the basis of faith, like childlike faith, is something that is ultimately divorced from your ability to later on come and justify it and understand it better. I think that's a process we all go through in all domains of knowledge. So I just would not hard separate these things.
So I think Alex.
I think that I think that a
I also
proper
need
way
to
to,
dip here quickly. I can do that
teach
in a
this
second.
is to go through, like, it, not just to tell the child that something is right or wrong, but to explain with them, to talk with them about why it is right or wrong, to have the reasoning of the morality in there from the start.
Yeah, that might be
Hold on,
preferable.
can we do outros real quick? I know a couple of us gotta leave.
Yeah,
I know
go
Alex has gotta go. I gotta go. Alex.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so first things first, I just want to say, Lethe, thanks so much for having this panel. It was a great discussion. And Gibby, just so you know, I have no ill will towards you, buddy.
Why
Like,
not?
I have a lot of good conversations. I love the back and forth between Gibby and I. So like, that's all there is to it. So
Gibby.
I don't.
Yeah.
Everyone seems to think like him and I like each other, but that's not true. I think Gibb's a good dude. But anyway, we need to come to understanding about something. Okay. I don't hate religion. I made that abundantly clear. I'm okay with people practicing religion. But the fact of the matter is just like, it's this whole concept like where people say my religion is the more correct, but they never say why, because they have no basis to go back upon. You could take out their entire religious text and you and I would align on the same principles, essentially. You could actually, okay, and the fact of the matter is, right? If you were to take 6 children and you put them in separate rooms and teach them one religious doctrine to each of these 6 children and send them out into the world, they're going to have that same belief and they're going to like basically say how their doctrine is correct. You can take those same 6 children, put them in a room and just basically teach them how, like, treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't be cruel or whatnot. And those children are going to basically be more accepting towards another, because religion, as a matter of fact, teaches people about the divide more than it does about the unity towards humankind, essentially. Yeah, and this is like the point of it. And like when people say, "Oh, well, atheists are wrong, secularists are wrong," essentially, how? We've all made the argument. We all believe that people have a right to have a certain belief in a certain religious structure. But the thing is, like, every time we like kind of challenge it, we make it seem like we're attacking other religions. No, we're simply saying is like you can have the same moral principles of like treating people with kindness and generosity without the religious aspect of it. But yet everyone seems to think my religion is more correct than your religion. Again, I bring it the fact you can have a person that says the earth is round and the other person that says the earth is flat. Somebody has to be correct. But the religious aspect, everyone's like, oh, well, that person's got a good point. That person's got a point. They have no argument to back up as to why their religion's correct. Again, it's not an attack on y'all. It's just a fact of like there's no consistency. But if people would have a conversation about this, you know where to find me. You can find me on Discord. We can have a conversation sometime. I'm all about it. Elite, you and I need to hook up in person sometime. You're always
Don't leave just yet. I have a response for you. And that'll be my closing too. No, it'll be my closing real quick though. So like,
all right.
I feel like this is it's an American thing, right? For me, I'm not gonna speak for anyone else, but like history comes to like a long play when it comes to like religion. Like if I believe my religion's correct or whatever it is. So for me, why I believe my book and my religion are more correct is because we believe that our book has been preserved since it dawned, like since it was given to us, and it's been you can date it back. We have chronological like things to date it back. So for me, the history that ties into it has me in belief that it is like more correct. I can look at it, I can date back, the scholars research it, and other religions have their belief for that as well. And then there's the debate about which one is ultimately correct. But it's once again, it's the same. It's just your ideal. It's ideology. Everyone thinks their ideology is correct, and they think the other ideology is incorrect. And as much as we allow people to like believe their ideologies, you still kind of want to convince people to believe what you believe.
All right, cool. I gotta go as well. Yeah. First, a couple responses here. I looked up the definition of Burkean here in Black's Law Dictionary, and it says definition one, another word for bullshit. Another definition two, center left authoritarianism, fascism. Disguises itself as republicanism.
Who hurt you?
Bullshit. People in the voting against Republicans. That's the Burkean. That was wanted to get that cleared up. Also, yeah, I don't hate anybody. I'm way too stoned to hate anybody. I like to just have a little spice. It's more fun that way. Third, I'm gonna be on Wix tomorrow at 5 p.m. Come check it out. Then after that, we're hosting Give Me a Break at 7:30. It's gonna be wild times. A lot of spicy stuff. People will be here. People will be there. Don't hate me because you ain't me. Go fuck yourself. Jesus loves you, and I'm out.
Peace out, Gibbs. Thanks for coming through.
Peace out, brother.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right.
Oh my god.
He had to. Who hurt him?
He just like I don't know if he either just loves pissing in my Cheerios or if he legitimately hates me, but it's one of the two.
Him and Connor
just
have an
loves
outstanding
pissing in
have an
Cheerios.
overlapping beef over Burkean conservatism.
Okay, so he's just probably picking on me with that, but like the problem
Yeah.
is I'm of the same opinion as Connor is like
It's a trigger word, yeah.
he's a shit conservative, and like I don't really like being lumped in with people like Gibbs because he's basically he's a Mammonite. He is a Mammonite. All right, that's really all it comes down to.
I just want to say quickly, like after what you after what
Okay,
you just said.
so Rich actually coined that one at the beginning of the stream before you got here, and it was amazing because he's 100% right. He worships Mammon, and it's fucking on point.
Yeah, he doesn't deny it either, really.
He
you heard
embraced
he
it.
didn't deny it even then,
Fucking
yeah.
embraced it.
Yeah, yeah. But I just wanted to say, like, that thing that Euchris was saying, I kind of wanted Alex to hear this response too, but it reminds me of like Plato when he talks about the citizens who are, you've got the gold and the silver and the bronze. The bronzes are the ones that have what you're talking about, which is their instincts are trained so that they, so that they're moderate in all things and that they don't, that they have good habits, but they don't necessarily understand why they have those habits or what those virtues are. And I think Alex misunderstood, or no, I think Amcom, I think you misunderstood Eucharist a little bit there. I don't think he was saying that it's better to have the instincts than to have than to have the knowledge. I think what he was saying is that if you don't have the knowledge, it's better to have the instincts than to have the knowledge and then ignore all of that knowledge because you have the intellectual capacity to get around it.
I think it's the same reason why. Oh, sorry.
Dave was what I was responding to with that because I think that quote is what gave me kind of the idea that I was arguing against with, this idea of indoctrination versus, actual belief that has been come to through some measure of rational thought, or at least processing in some way that is more than just I was told this is so.
I think that is the most common way that we come to believe anything is primarily through testimony. Like any random belief that you have from growing up, from high school, from any kind of education you have, the first way that you come to believe it is true is because someone you trusted told it to you. And then later on, you might have questions. And then there are things that intellectually virtuous people can do to chase down those questions and then confirm those beliefs that you already have. And you may find, as I've found many times throughout the years, that, I came to believe this for bad reasons, and then you revise your beliefs. But I think this is just any quality or kind of belief you might have the most common and most fundamental way that we come to believe it is by testimony, and then the confirmation comes later. And so I don't think we should segment out religious belief as this like weird category that's different from all the rest of it.
Okay, this is where I'm actually going to bring in a Bible verse that I'm probably misremembering, at least somewhat, but it's the one that goes something along the lines of, when you are a child, you think as a child, you reason as a child, but when you grow up, you must begin to think as an adult and reason as an adult. I realize I'm completely misquoting that. The point, though, is still the same. Yes, as children, the only way we have to learn some concepts is, as you say, through testimony. But when we grow up, when we become adults and gain the ability to reason through those moral axioms that we were given as children, then we can build a more substantial base by which to hold on to them. And I think a lot of people just don't do that. They stick with the ease that is being told this is right and this is wrong, and you don't have to think about it. And I think by doing so, we are weakening people's ability to detect moral bullshit when it's fed to them by some preacher, some religious leader somewhere who's ultimately trying to get them to do, some heinous bullshit or just harm themselves, as we see with, these mega wealthy televangelists.
I just don't see this as a problem exclusively with religious people. I think it's a problem with most people and most beliefs.
I think religion.
Do you have a problem with tradition? Do you have a problem with tradition in general?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, so like, wait.
I love
so
it.
You can't hold like that. So then, what are you going to teach? Okay, so if you were to have kids, unless you don't want to have kids, like if you teach them nothing, right? Anything you teach them is like going to be technically indoctrination. It's your beliefs that you're imposing on a child who has no other beliefs, right? Like how can you possibly teach a child the world's like philosophy? Right, it's gonna have to start with your philosophy, and then when they get old enough, hopefully you've taught them to be like a well-rounded enough intellectual individual where they can think for themselves, and then they can come to their own idea. But like outside of that, everything that you teach a child, everything, yeah, I know, but like there has to be some form of tradition or culture that they're growing up in and learning. Otherwise, because that's just like how general people like exist. Like the average person has some type of culture or like tradition that they follow, and that they're gonna pass that on to their kid. And then like in that regard, everything is indoctrination, because like a child really has no choice in what they believe. So like you're literally just always indoctrinating children until they're old enough to have their own thoughts. And like whether it be school, whether it be like progressive theory, whether it be traditionals, like it doesn't really matter. There's some type of tradition or like culture that you are indoctrinating into that child. You can't there is no cultural culture to live in. I don't know how do you do that?
You're right in that there's no way to do a purely culturally neutral upbringing. I agree with that it's not a practical thing to do, but I'm saying there are things people can do to ensure that children are imbued with the skills to make these determinations for themselves as early as possible, and in so doing defend themselves from the
why is the assumption that religious people don't do that? Why is the assumption that religious people don't do that?
I don't think
because
that's
I don't see because the most of the religious people that I run into don't know how to do that. Have you watched things like
most people don't know how to do anything intellectual, right? If you just grab a random person off the street, their quality and amount of knowledge is nothing.
Well, I feel like me and Eucharist have been able to have like pretty decent conversation and like arguments and debate versus like most people that you've had, right? Like
ultimately,
Tiberius threw a knife earlier. I caught it. It was the whole thing, like.
Yeah. Ultimately, my critique here is about how we teach children, but I think that religious-backed teachings tend to do this in a way that I disapprove of more than secular forms of teaching. I'm not saying that either does it perfectly right. I'm just saying I tend to prefer secular forms of education because they tend to include critical thinking skills that I don't see taught nearly as often in
because religion
influenced education.
because religion is more like, like a traditional thing. It's done by traditional. It's not done by logic, right? It's not
And
meant to like.
that's the problem I have with it.
No, wait. Then you have a problem with just society. Like, there's a bunch of things that are just cultural that come from tradition that we just kind of like. High schoolers go to like prom. This is just something we've agreed upon. It's a cultural norm that's kind of imposed on people, so on and so forth. So it's like
Yeah,
we
and I
just
think
have
that's a silly
traditions.
cultural norm. Like,
I mean,
the
no,
thing
no,
is,
no. It's not a
you're
silly culture.
talking-
No. It's not
No.
silly cultural norm. It's a norm
You're
that we
talking
stick
to
to as a
someone who is
society.
autistic and specifically criticizes cultural institutions
Because
simply
you don't
because
agree
of the
because you don't agree
traditional
with them.
value.
Wait,
Which
wait,
is
wait,
fine,
wait.
which is fine because you don't agree with them and or potentially like, don't fit in. But the fact of the matter is, it's like as a society, the larger society has come to the agreement that this is the norm. So like we participate in traditions. That's why I asked you, is there an acultural society? There is no neutral cultural society because you can't do that, because when large groups of people get together, they're going to form like their own little cultures and subcultures. Like we have an American culture, but then you have a culture in Texas, California, New York, Michigan that are completely different from one another from state to state, because the people in those respective states grew up with different like surroundings, different foods, different music, whatever it may be, but they form their own culture. So like, yeah, like sure, it may be better to like if everyone was like neutral on the fact, but the fact of the matter is like we can never actually be neutral.
No, but that doesn't mean we can't try to reduce the influence that tradition has apropos of no like rational purpose. Cultures do serve rational purposes in a lot of cases, but learning
really.
how to understand what those are and explain
Culture's
them.
literally just like feels in what you find around you. Realistically, if you want to break it down to its like simplest form, it's feels in what you find around you.
In a lot of cases, you can find a practical reason that some cultural tradition was put into place, and it simply stuck around as something of a and I'm losing the word for it, like an organ that's no longer needed, vestigial product than any ongoing practical need. But most traditions start out because they have some practical purpose that they were used.
And why should we get rid of them? If we have a tie to history and it's like a tie to
if we no longer have that practical purpose for a tradition, then why are we still doing it?
Because people enjoy it. Like there's the joy aspect of like
if you
culture.
want to enjoy that, fine, but don't socially shame me into not going along with it because I don't see the purpose.
Like if you've been socially shamed, I'm sorry, I'm not socially shaming you. And so like if people are just assholes and therefore you're tying in the tradition to like people are assholes, it's just that those people are assholes. It's not that the tradition is bad or the want for a tradition is bad, right? Like
that
there's like
assholery is a lot more prevalent than I think you realize.
At what point should it become an
I would
atavism?
kind of agree with you. I might like agree with you, right? Like that there are a lot of assholes when it comes to like religious people, but also like I feel like there's a lot of assholes when it comes to like academia, right? Like there's a lot of people who you say something, it's like give me a source. It's like fucking like you're not allowed to say one anecdote or one feeling without being like targeted.
I'm sitting over here arguing against being an asshole, but I just happen to be pointing out one way in which people are assholes quite frequently. That's not to say there aren't other ways. Like the whataboutism isn't helpful here. I'm trying to point out that like when we're talking about traditions and we're talking about the implied social shame that comes with not assimilating to a particular tradition that has no practical reason to exist, it's just because people enjoy it. Fine, enjoy it. Don't try to pull me into it when I don't.
Well, you're doing the reverse shame thing, right? Like in saying that there's no point to the tradition, that there's no logical standing. Like you're doing the reverse shame thing. Is kind of like what I'm saying about like the academics, right? In that like there's no logical or fundamental or scholarly understanding or reason for this, so therefore you should not be doing it because it's
that's the thing. I'm not telling
to
other
shame you
people
both.
not to do it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying critically analyze the things that you have been taught to accept as axiomatic.
Most Americans don't do that. I'm saying like, so is your argument that I haven't? That's kind of what I'm saying. I'm not like you're not attacking me, but most people don't do it in general. So like, yes, I agree with you that the general populace should be like a little bit more like introspective, right? Like look within, think, but like most people just aren't.
I'm not calling anyone specific out.
Yeah.
When I say you, I mean the
But, like,
generic you, not you.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like,
specifically, and I apologize
I'm
if
a
my
product of,
language
like, a
hasn't-
religious background and a religious upbringing that's antithetical to what you're saying, and I think Eucharist is as well. And so is ICAO, which is like, we are religious people who can have the conversation. We're not fighting back, and like we're just coming with like our beliefs, our facts, our points.
And I
Eucharist,
want
I feel like you've been wanting to jump in. Yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, I on the critical thinking thing, I think we might. This might be a false intuition, but empirically, I have this intuition actually that we're underestimating the amount of serious intellectual engagement and critical thinking the craziest people we know do. And my evidence of this right now, anecdotally, is if you just go out to a bar or just on the street and just quiz people on like fundamentalism, like 6-day creationism, young Earth kind of things, you probably won't find that many people on the street who believe this. But if you go watch like 5 days of modern day debates, you will see the highest concentration of creationists you've ever seen who do nothing but argue on the internet and research other people's positions, right? These people are heavily intellectually engaged in defending something that I think everybody here would say is kind of intellectually bankrupt. But these people are very invested in a kind of rigorous, at least in their mind, engagement with these things. So I think we're sort of actually underestimating the effect of serious religious education on inspiring people to do the kind of critical thinking we want, just because we don't like the conclusions they're coming to. Again, maybe they're bad conclusions, but I think it's just true that the craziest, most intense religious people are also the ones who are like doing readings in philosophy and apologetics and trying their best to defend their faith in the way that Alex was saying earlier. People don't like, they're the ones going out and doing this stuff. The people like who are just like cradle Catholics, or the people who are like raised, culturally Muslim or something, like they might not be doing this, right? Maybe they're reading their Bible, or maybe they're doing their prayers, or maybe whatever, but like they're not doing that kind of engagement, right? So it's not like just critical thinking solves the problem and leads us to the correct answers, right? Yeah.
No, but I'm saying critical thinking would improve things more generally. Yeah, there are a lot of people who can use critical thought to nefarious ends to try and convince people of things that they may not even believe themselves, or if they do, they, maybe they realize that they're, doing so in dishonest ways. People can misuse any tool, and that's all critical thought really is. But ultimately, I think as a tool, it's going to produce more good outcomes than bad outcomes. And yes, I will admit that I take that position largely on faith.
Okay, can I ask one question? Then I don't want to dominate. I want to hear what other people have to say. But
Yep.
If you had to assess, maybe these categories don't mesh with the way you're thinking about these things, but I think in categories of like intellectual virtues, like the kinds of people who demonstrate the intellectual capacities of the kind of person I would want to be like if I was using my brain correctly. Do you think that a person, like if you go watch modern day debate and you watch like a Kent Hovind or somebody defending 6-day creationism, do you think that person or actually no, I'm going to fix this hypothetical. Give me just a second. Take somebody who's a 6-day creationist who really, every day is like pouring through the scientific literature, is studying not just their Bible, but history, science, their own tradition, other traditions, other philosophies. They're doing that really, really well every night, very rigorous. You couldn't beat them on any intellectual topic, but they come to conclusions you think are ultimately scientifically false. Or do you think the person who is like, yeah, I graduated college as an engineering major, and of course I believe in evolution and this thing over here, but it's not something I've really dug into. Which of those people would you consider like better intellectually? Which one would you like want more people to be like?
That's an interesting question.
Because one of the things that like operates on my brain about this, I'm very informed by a lot of people hate him, and I'm not trying to trigger people, but there's this Christian philosopher Alvin Plantinga who I really like, and he has this whole approach to religious epistemology where his intuition is like, I want to believe, he's like, I believe in God, and I'm a philosopher, and I teach philosophy at the college level, and I can argue with atheists, and I can do this really, really well. But I want to believe, as a God believer, that my grandma, who's never done that intellectual work, has a form of belief that is in some way justified, or as he calls it, warranted. Like there's some intellectual virtuosity here for my grandma who believes this thing, in addition to the person who's done the philosophical work. And that's something that I really like, because my intuition is that most people go through similar intellectual processes, really well operating intellects arrive at a variety of conclusions, for perfectly decent reasons, and I can understand that. And and so somebody whose grandma believes something over here versus over here, I don't think they're like one's fundamentally intellectually vicious because they disagree with me, if that makes sense. That I don't know if that helps.
Ultimately, I think I would respect the intellectual honesty of the engineer who believes evolution even though he doesn't fully understand it, over the intellectual rigor but what I consider to be dishonesty of someone like Ken Ham or Kent Hovind, who spend all of this time, digging into these subjects, in order to be able to argue a point that, I have to imagine, with as intelligent as these people are, they likely understand that there is some amount of deception they're doing. Maybe not. Maybe they're just as sincere as they show to their believers or their followers. But like, I think it seems pretty clear to me that anyone who's doing the level of research they are, even in sharing the, in portraying the opposing views of, people who study evolution, the amount by which they tend to misrepresent that opposition tells me that there is an intentional level of intellectual dishonesty and attempting to deceive that is occurring when that happens. I'm not going to say I can prove it. That's just a really strong impression I get based on what I hear them say and how I hear them portray the scientific, literature and the scientific evidence and understanding. So I have to assume, based on that they're being dishonest. So I would rather have someone who is intellectually honest and admits when they don't know something than be so rigorous as to use that deceptively.
I don't have a disagreement that people are dishonest. And this is something I've been kind of dealing with in my, what's the term here? My own internal monologue, and just like trying to sort this out, is that, I kind of have been fighting the idea that I live in a society of liars. And the reality is that I think the conclusion is that, yeah, I do. And I don't think it's just our society. I think humans are just actually that shit. And the problem that you're having is the same problem that I'm having. You want to subject to as people to a standard that you find normal and reasonable and effective, but people can't meet it. And I don't know how to tell you how to deal with that, because I don't know how to fucking deal with that. Because I'm I love people on some regards, but then there's other levels where it's just like the standard y'all held yourselves to makes me think you're all scum. So, does anyone else have that particular feeling?
Yeah, it's I love humans as a whole, but as individuals, fuck them.
Oh no, I'm the other way.
Kind of what I've come to.
If I like people, or I can get along with a person as an individual because I can break bread and they can tell me certain things that they're passionate about and the horrible things that they've suffered through, and I just don't have it.
I'm not saying individuals are bad. I'm saying I have empathy for humanity as a whole, but the more individuals I see that are just negating it, I'm not black-pilled on humanity, but I'm black-pilled on individuals. I find there are a few individuals that I can actually have conversations with and break bread and so on and so forth, but then the vast majority of individuals I meet tend to be shitty, but I think that's just my own circumstance or my own bubble. So humanity I have faith in, individuals less faith in, if that makes any sense.
No, it does make sense. I'm just
trying to avoid. I've been trying to avoid reaching this conclusion.
Which one's in when you guys
more and more,
of course.
More and more, I agree with Kay from Men in Black. A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky animals.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer a slightly more positive anthropology than what Ty was giving that can explain the same phenomenon. We know through psychology, for instance, that we act before we think about it, before the neurons fire in our heads. We're already forming an opinion and getting ready to, and responding to things in the moment, and then we're inventing the rationalizations behind it or the reasons behind it. That's just something we know about the human brain. So if that's the case, then not in terms of importance, because I agree with I agree with Ancom that it's important to think out through all the reasons and follow logic to the degree that you can. But I think in terms of just order and time, we have to follow those good habits like Eucharist is talking about, training ourselves so that our instinct is the right instinct. Even if after that instinct, we can come along with reason and make corrections to it. Often we're going to act before we even think about those things that justify our actions. And so to that extent, it's more important to, again, in the way Plato puts it, it's more important, I think, to make sure that we're good bronzes before we are good golds, right? That our first instinct is a good instinct, even if we don't think about it. Although it's better to think about it, right? Like, it is better to think about it, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. And so, because we're going to act based on our impulses, we need to also have good impulses.
There's a
the one
there's
thing-
a quote my spouse has told me, which was, the first thing you think is what you've been taught to think. The second thing you think is what you actually think. And I think
Right.
that kind of plays in a little bit here, because there's the difference between that instinctual reaction and the considered reaction.
Yeah, I agree. We need both, right? But to the extent that we can't always be trusted to go back and rethink the things that we think, especially if, like, we have the revulsion in, where we see something and we immediately are revolted by that thing. And often that revulsion comes from an unfair set of assumptions that we've sort of built in to our subconscious, or more religious people might say soul. But so it's best to ignore that first instinct that you think about and then think things through. But it is also true that quite often you just, as a matter of as a matter of fact, you just won't do that in many cases. And so if you have a good instinct to begin with, to me that makes it a lot better, because even if it is better to stop and think about and analyze every action that we do. But we react to so many things every day that we're not going to do that with the vast majority of things that we encounter, in fact.
Yeah, but there are a lot of situations where you can consider an act after the fact, and that can influence your reaction.
I think we're all agreeing with that.
Future situations. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're all agreeing with that. I just think I think it's just, we can't rely on that as the only thing, right? That's going to help us.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm
good
gonna
habits
throw
are
a speed
good, right?
throw a speed bump in here. Eucharist, no shot you've read all those books, brother.
Oh, not all of them. No.
You just had, yeah. All right, I was about, that's a lot of books, bro.
I think
Your house is mad heavy.
I might be like 50%, but no, not all of them.
Fuck
I
yeah,
buy
fuck
way
yeah.
more books than I can read, which is the
I
point.
respect the honesty, because God damn, I'm just looking.
No.
Yeah,
Moving must be a
there's
bitch for
saying
you,
that
bro.
Oh, it's awful. Oh my god.
There's a saying that I've learned being married to a book lover. You don't buy books to read them. You buy books to have books.
To
Yeah.
hoard them, yes.
Understood.
You buy them to have the
Understood.
option to read them. I am a firm believer, by the way, in the idea that an unread book is actually more valuable than a read book, right? Because once you've read it.
Sorry, my spouse can't hear you, but the microphone picks them up. So.
Oh no, that's fine.
But yeah, they were saying they're just two separate hobbies: buying books and reading books.
Yes, yeah. They're related, but I don't want
Yeah.
to talk over Tiberius if you wanted to jump in because I've been talking a lot.
So here's where I kind of separate on one other thing that I was wanting to say, and that is, I think that religion is more of a vehicle than it is actually like just like the set of morals that everyone's like, oh, you should get your morals from this. Like,
I think it's a language.
in a way it is, but like what I'm trying to say is this, is that people think that you need religion to get your morality. I actually agree with the secularists that you don't. The problem is that how do you teach morality? You teach philosophy. You teach like the rationalization of all these things. And what a lot of people don't seem to realize, and this really comes out of a lot of the militant secularists, is that religion is that. It's literally mythologized philosophy. And a lot of the stories about like Jonah and the whale and yada 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 sound fucking ridiculous, but they're supposed to have like morals to the story, rationales to the story. You like literally, even though it's mythology, but like Icarus, right? Fly too close to the sun, your wings melt, and you fucking die. That's the point of religion. That's why it actually exists. The problem is that there's a lot of people who just absolutely bastardize it. And again, I lost the fucking term. Pharisees. Like, literally, is this not what the Christians have a problem with, where Jesus is talking about? It's like, yes, they're supposed to actually embody this, but they're completely full of shit. And this is where a lot of people are today with their religions.
Man, it's flawed, right? We are sinful.
True. The problem is that we're like I will agree with like the opponents of religion that religion's in a good place right now. I think we're in the bottom of the cycle as far as like a general quality and like institutional power and cohesion. Is that we're literally to the point where Martin Luther's about to put up the fucking door or to nail his 95 points on the wall. I expect something like that is going to happen again, or Christianity is literally going to die.
I wanted to go back to the back and forth Ancom and Ollie were having about the like think, you know, the first thought versus the reconsidered thought. I understand that intuition. But I don't know if you guys ever play bar trivia, but if you ever have, sometimes you'll learn that your first thought is probably the one you should stick with, and you can talk yourself out of the right answer. And that's only like half serious. But if you want to like crash course book on like how I think about thinking, there's a really great book by philosopher Matthew Crawford that's called The World Beyond Your Head. That's basically about like the importance of embodied cognition and doing things in the real world that have feedback and practices that you learn from in a tactile way. He's a big follower of this philosopher, Michael Polanyi. He develops this idea of tacit knowledge, the kind of things that you know but couldn't even necessarily articulate if you were asked, but you do know it. And there are people that we know who have this kind of knowledge. The last third of the book is him digging into these specialists in organ construction and repair who have basically from scratch over time learned things about historical medieval organs that were basically lost to time just by working on them and feeling them and playing them and making them. And effectively the point is that you can, through this practice and a real embodied living tradition, learn things that are not necessarily subject to that second level of like, well, let me think about why I'm doing this. Sometimes you just learn something that's like, it just feels right. And I think it's a really important dimension of knowledge in both the like belief angle, religion angle, and in the tactile skill-based tradition sort of stuff. But yeah, that's one of the things that's sort of driving maybe the difference of intuitions here. Yeah.
It sounds like you were describing Ultra Instinct. All right, that's all. That's all it sounded like. You know, was that like you just know what you know before you know it, and your body just has an inherent like
God,
reaction.
You picking up a Canadian accent over there, Socio? Do you know what you know?
Just did you just bring Dragon Ball Super into this under the wire?
100%.
All right,
100%.
just making sure that's what that shit was.
Well, I mean, like I think to some extent, man, these stories that were given like through these animes that I watched when I was younger, kind of same deal with like religious stories. It's you follow the story of this person, they go through a journey, it kind of teaches you a sense of morality, so on and so forth. It's not so much that I think morality comes from religion. Obviously, like religions came like through people, whether there was like divine intervention or not, right? Like the people were the ones that had to form it. But I think that once again, it was just like we agreed on it, and that was the difference. Is that back then we weren't so connected that we weren't like there wasn't 3 million people that we knew or 500 people that we had on our list or discords with. It was your little tribe of maybe like a few hundred people, and you kind of all agreed on this thing. And that's what I think is like the importance of religions, that the communal aspect realistically is the most important function of it for me. And I think you lose out on it when you take it out. That's my issue. But I am going to take off, guys. Have a wonderful night. It was a pleasure meeting you, Ancom and Eucharist. Thank you for having me on.
Wait, this is your first time meeting them?
Yeah.
Oh,
maybe.
Dude.
I see him on stuff all the time, but I don't know if I don't think we've ever landed in the same place.
Yeah, well, I just added both of you, so whatever, add me back, and we'll have good chats. Good night, fellas. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Let's go.
Happy Saturnalia. All that good stuff.
We didn't get a chance to argue about the fact that Christmas does not have pagan origins, and that's completely okay. All right.
Oh, me, I'd love to have a chat with you. Me and Eucharist are gonna have a nice chat one day. All right, fellas.
All right, have a good one. Yeah, I should probably also go. I think if I'm going to get to bed at a reasonable hour.
I think this conversation went really well. I didn't expect.
It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, maybe
gotta
I'll
stop
get
putting
no-
Alex and fucking Gibbs in the same room, please. I'm
Bro.
begging you.
Yeah, that was interesting. I've never interacted with Alex, so I feel like we could have a better conversation another night, but we'll see. I don't know. I think we were. Whatever I was saying was not connecting to what he was saying. I feel like we weren't.
Look, I love Alex. I don't know if I've actually told them this directly, but I 100% like am on board with this. Dude has been great, but he has changed in the time that I've known him, and the only way I can describe it is that I think he's in his truck too much. And when I mean that he's a trucker for his job. And basically what it comes down to is that like the longer I've known this man, the more he sounds like NPR.
That's great. That's hey, that's a good explanation, right? You listen to the same. Well, I know truckers who the longer I've known them, the more they sound like Joe Rogan. So that's same problem probably. Yeah.
That's probably more
you're,
common, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. You're in the cab long enough, and you just it sticks in your ears. I think. Yeah. Okay. That's well fair. No,
Thank you all for
Yeah.
being here for the conversation, to chat. Appreciate all of you. You are always the winner for the evening. So I'm going to go ahead and raid you guys out to Universal Discourse. It has been an amazing night, and thank you all for being here.
Good
Thanks
night.
for having me.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah,
I'll
thanks
be
for
staying
coming
around for a
through.
bit.
All right. How'd
The
the
whole
move go?
thing hinged on Eucharist pulling up. Otherwise, I was going to do the Kendrick thing.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry it took so long. Yeah, my kids are usually in bed early, but they both decided to be pains tonight, so that was a lot of fun.
Why is my